Welcome everyone to Comics from the Multiverse, episode 223. I am Peter, and joining me is Connor.
Yeah, straight to me this time.
Well, Matt will be missing for a little bit, so I can't do my joke every time with oh, Matt's not here. Oh, this is upsetting.
Just retiring it from the start already.
Yeah.
Just yeah.
I'll get to why that is in a second, but I'll introduce the show first properly. It's a DC Comics podcast. We talk about DC Comics every week, and coming up on this week's show, we do have, of course, the January Solicits and all the future state nonsense to talk about. I say nonsense because it seems overly complicated for what should be a fairly simple 2-month thing. So we'll get into that in a bit, but we also have, of course, books to talk about. We'll be talking about Dark Knight's Death Metal issue 4, Wonder Woman 764, Superman 26, The Flash 763, Hawkman 28, Batman and the Outsiders 17, Rorschach number 1, and Strange Adventures issue 6. So that's what's coming up on this week's show. Should be a relatively meaty one, given all those books and the hefty solicits to get into.
It might have been okay without this future state. Nonsense is a good word, I think, and not that it's inherently bad. Just there's a lot of what it is.
Far from it. If anything, I'm actually rather optimistic about the content itself. It's just not the clearest batch of solicits I've ever read. So yeah, so we'll get into all that in a minute. Yes, and we will address why Matt's not here. Matt is going to be off the show for a little bit, undetermined. He's taking a little break. And I asked him, when he told me why he was taking a break, I asked him, what he wanted me to tell you guys, because I thought I might have to lie. I thought I may have to sugarcoat it and say something. Basically, he's just taking a break for mental health reasons. He's having a rough time right now. So if you do wish to go to Matt of Steel 57 on Twitter and give him some love and encouragement, please do so. But he will be back in due course. So go and show him some support over on the Twitters. But the show, alas, must go on. Even if that does mean going on with Connor.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, you stuck with me.
Okay, so that's
By the end of this, Pete will be breaking out the booze too.
I know. The irony is that Matt trying to deal with his stress is going to give me stress by leaving me alone with you. So we will get into the January solicits, and for some reason they're not all in one article this month, because, and maybe there's some other sites that have put them in one article, but we typically go to Newsarama. It's just the place we go for solicits. It's the place that typically has them. And they did this thing where they kind of did just the Future State Part 1, which was all the Bat-related books, and then did the Future State Part 2, which was all the Superman/Justice League, and for some reason Swamp Thing's included in Justice League. So really all it is Superman and the rest of the DCU, because the Bat family's so goddamn big that is half of the line. But anyway.
Pretty much, yeah.
And then, so you think, okay, so they put them out early, because sometimes they'll do a few early solicits, no big deal. But when we got to Friday and the rest of the solicits came out, they just put out an article that had just what was left. The Black Label, the trades, the other little things like Batman Adventures and the odds and ends.
Because when this future state stuff happens in January, as we knew it was going to, everything else is taking 2 months off, or everything else that's mainline DC is taking 2 months off.
I don't think that explains why it's not all solicited in one article.
No, I meant explains why that final section, you said, it's just Black Label and stuff.
Oh, sure, yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing we hadn't mentioned yet. I mean, I don't know if we ever actually talked about this possibility. I think if you'd asked me last month, is this going to be something where we have no regular books for 2 months? I don't know what odds I'd have given you. I don't know if I'd have been 50-50, or if I'd have said, it's probably going to be like Convergence, there's going to be like nothing for 2 months as this all goes on. Or if it was going to be like, there's a bunch of miniseries, but most of the books will still be running.
I can tell you right now that would have been my reaction, because we knew they were cancelling books. Books were ending, shall we say. We knew, we had teams that were like, doing some fill-ins. I thought, they'll kind of like what they're doing for Endless Winter, they'll co-opt some of those books into just being the future state mini things for, there'll be tie-ins or whatever. There'll be a handful of minis announced alongside it, and we'll still have the core handful of titles running. So this does actually surprise me that they went this route, because it's not like Convergence where there was a real world reason for it, where they were moving offices. It's not like I think because we did actually talk about this well over a year ago, the possibility of them taking a couple of months off for something after Mel. And the idea was it was before 5G, and it was going to be to let you let the creators get ahead, so they had lead time on all the new books. But most of the writers and artists involved with this are still just all the regular DC stable. They're all still working on books here, so it's not like they're getting time off from anything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Obviously, whatever 5G was going to be is merged into we're doing this. Or this was always the plan before 5G, but we're doing this instead. Although I do think some of what 5G was is kind of part of this now, and
Absolutely,
it's remolded and it's changed, and now we've just got new arcs. We might just have some new books next, not next to the Solicits, but Marcio Solicits might have a few new books. But it does say in their announcement page that all these books that are going right now will be coming back with the numbering staying where it is. It's not changing, and
nothing is suddenly cancelled that we didn't know was already cancelled from the last Solicits. It's not like all these books are suddenly ending. It's like no. Like Justice League Dark, for example, will be picking back up at issue 30 odd or whatever it's going to be.
Yeah, I do suspect a few new books. If not like a direct Supergirl replacement, for example, I do expect something that's filling that void in the line, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah, and because Future State as a whole, we know does spin out of the ending of Metal. That has been confirmed by Snyder himself as well, I believe.
Yeah, so there's definitely going to be some universe spinning out of Future State, or
that's the assumption, right? Because the broad premise of Future State is a look at the possible future of the DC universe in the state of where it is after Metal. So I don't know if they're going to reset things and fix things in the way that we usually talk about, but I do think there will be some story reason at the end of Future State. I don't know what title it's going to be because there doesn't seem to be. There's no main Future State book. There's no event, headlining thing. So I don't know where it'll be, but I imagine there will be something that gives us a reason to get back to the regular continuity.
Yeah, possibly. If it needs it. I mean, if it's not like we actually go to this alternate future, it's more just a relevant glimpse because of what's about to be going on in the main continuity coming after or something like that. I don't know. But a
lot of it feels like a lot of it. Before we get into any of the details, it feels like market research in the sense of I think there's a lot of big changes to a lot of characters in this. I think if this had been 5G and they'd dropped all this at once, people would not have reacted well. It would have been possibly worse than the New 52 reaction with reset and everything. It would have just been too much at once. As a 2-month event, I think people can swallow that a lot easier. But I think they might use this to see which elements do people react positively to, and maybe kind of start working towards those over the next couple of years.
Well, I've got one right for you in the Batman book that I want them to work towards. We'll talk about that.
I know. As soon as I saw it, I screenshotted that and said, "Oh, Pete's having a heart attack."
I do want to, even though I do think there'd be a reaction to it if they did like a line-wide thing with all this stuff changing. It definitely would have a reaction. There would be negative components to it. I do think it would be a little different to New 52, just because New 52 was resetting things. This would be based more in here's how things change from wherever we are now.
Sure.
So at least on a personal level, I would say it inherently is far more, I guess, welcoming to me.
I get that. I think, and there is no individual part of this news that that I'm aware of. Maybe we'll read into the. I haven't really read into all of it. Maybe we'll read into a bit, and I'll disagree. But there's no individual part that stood out to me that I hate on its own. But I do think if this had been the quote unquote permanent status quo going forward, I think some of it might have lost me as well. Like, it would have been, and I'm open to change, but it might have been too much at once. For me to go, oh yeah, this is a lot.
Yeah, it'd be like anything. I think it'd be an interesting time trying to dive into it all. That said, though, the second we do read some of these things, or not some of these things, but if it was an ongoing thing from the start, the second we got to a book and a character had changed and we didn't like the book, it'd be like, oh god, can we have the old one back, please? Can we get it back immediately? Can we get real Wonder Woman back anytime now? Thank you. That would maybe be like an issue with that. As it is, this seems like a far more interesting and consequential convergence. And what I mean by that is convergence, I took one glance at and went, nope, I can just take 2 months off from reading comics and come back because it feels like nothing but a filler couple of months. This feels less filler to me and more like it has a purpose. And maybe it is just the testing the waters of seeing what they can do with some characters. But it does feel like it has a bit more weight to it. Maybe it's just because there's good creators involved. Maybe it's just because I'm looking at some of these names on the main books and going, oh, hey, I actually want to read these.
No, you might be onto it. And that's what I'm saying, with Convergence, there was a purpose to it, but it was a very, real world purpose as, moving offices. There wasn't a story reason, really.
And to be fair, like, some of these main writers, I'm just looking at the Batman ones, for example. Tynion is not on that list. So there might still be an argument here that some of the regular like writers who are doing runs are still getting a little bit of time to.
Could be. I assume Tynan's doing books somewhere. I haven't looked into all of the teams. I kind of just skimmed. I assumed he's on a book somewhere.
And Dark Detective, which I assume is kind of the Detective Comics replacement for now, for these 2 months. That's not what's his face, Tamaki. So it could be that they are getting a little bit of time, even if they are writing the one short story in one of the anthology books somewhere.
I feel like some of these might be setting up not necessarily to continue these stories, although that's something there's a possibility, I think. But more just like Dark Detective you mentioned there is Mariko Tamaki with Dan Mora is doing a story that is seemingly continuing from what their story was in Detective 1027. So it kind of feels like, well, maybe there's going to be maybe they're being groomed to take over Detective after Tamaki in the next year, handful of months down the line.
It is very possible. So what I'm going to do is there's a sort of paragraph at the top of the section in the main announcement. I'm going to read that and then switch over to just going through the books one by one. And Connor was confused before we started about why there's like a 4-issue books that don't seem to have an issue 2. He just didn't scroll far enough because issue 2 is just further down the list.
Why would they format it that way? Just put the 2 issues together.
Because they put it in order that they're coming out, seemingly.
Shambles.
Connor was too lazy to control F. He just didn't look for issue 2, thinking.
I'm sorry, I didn't control F Batman in the Batman Solicits.
The book has a title. You could have control F next Batman, and it would have given you the next issue. It's not rocket science.
I'm sorry that Newsarama broke from their established format, not just in splitting it into 3 stupid articles instead of 1. They're going for these clicks, the damn Games Radar. But also now that they're breaking from their format of keeping the issues together. This is just terrible.
Okay, anyway. Bat Family paragraph. In this future, Gotham City is controlled by the Magistrate. This villainous regime has taken control of the city, now under constant surveillance. All mass vigilantes have been outlawed, and Batman has been killed. But led by an all-new Batman, a new assembly of Gotham's Guardians rise up to give hope to all those who lost it. So that's just a sort of general kind of setting here. But I'm going to go through the books one by one now, the issues one by one. So first up on January 5th is the next Batman issue 1, and this is a 4-issue, so it's double shipping for the 2 months, because all this is just over 2 months. And this is going to make next month's solicits really boring, because next month's solicits are just going to be the other half of all these things. Maybe with some one-shots that are different to make it more exciting. But
pretty much, yeah.
But so it's worth mentioning that some of these main books, not all of them, some of them are regular size, regular price, but a lot of these main books, so this one is a $8 64-page book, which has 3 or 4 stories.
Three stories in this one, I believe.
In this one, yeah. And then, but there's 5 stories overall, so clearly it's going to bounce around some of the other stories. In this next Batman book, you've got the next Batman by John Ridley and Nick Derriton, which obviously is going to continue onwards. And John Ridley, of course, his Batman story has been teased for a while. You've got Outsiders, written by Brandon Thomas, with art by Sumit Kumar. And then you've got Arkham Knights, written by Paul Jenkins and art by Jackson Herbert. So it's an interesting format.
I'm familiar
here.
with a lot of the others there. After the first story, I don't really know any names there.
It's an interesting format here to me to essentially have going for the page count, it's essentially 3 full issues of different stories.
It seems to be, yeah, you're right.
Playing out over 4 issues. So rather than having, 5 3-issue miniseries, we're getting one giant 4-issue miniseries instead. It's a interesting. if you're going to buy all of them, this would definitely be saving money. But if you weren't interested in all of them, this is making you spend more. So it's
there's an argument that it's pro-consumer in one way, like you say, but also that it is removing that choice in the other end, and it does seem like it's going to be a pretty expensive couple of months if you want to dive into this properly.
It is worth mentioning there are less. Assuming let's say you were buying 70% of the line. If you buy 70% of the line in January and February, you are buying less books. So they are costing more, but there is less of them. Which also it seems to be something that DC are veering towards a little bit as well, as bigger, oversized books, but less of them. So that's the next Batman. I'm not going to read all the descriptions for all of the individual stories because we'll be here forever if I do that. Next up, same day, is Future State Harley Quinn issue 1. This is regular size, regular price. This is a 2-issue book, so 1 issue January, 1 issue February. Simple enough. Yeah, also dealing with the Magistrate. So it feels like all the Gotham books are all going to be dealing with this Magistrate stuff.
And I think what's interesting is, I don't know if you didn't mention the team on that one, I don't think. Written by Stephanie Phillips and art by Simone DeMeo. What I think is interesting is the final line of the solicit mentions written by Rising Star, and the next era of Harley Quinn begins here. And obviously, Harley does not have an ongoing book right now that ended with 75, I think.
That's something that we said a couple of months ago. Is when we were looking at some of the teases that we're doing for some of these books, but it was particularly more to do with the one shots that got coming out in December and the start of January. Because there's a couple of stuff in that first week of January that was already solicited in December. Keep in mind.
Yeah.
I remember saying that some of these writers on some of these characters in Future State and some of those one shots might actually end up being the writers on new ongoings for those characters afterwards. They might actually be the seeds being planted for that. So this being the seed for the new Harley series would not surprise me.
Yeah.
At all. And then January 12th, Future State Dark Detective issue 1. So this is kind of your Detective Comics replacement. So this is going to alternate with the next Batman book. And just like next Batman, it's oversized, although it's not as big. This one's a $5.99 book at 48 pages. It has 2 stories in it. You got Dark Detective written by Mariko Tamaki and Dan Mora with the art, and that is a wonderful team. I'm all for that. You've got Grifter, which is written by Matthew Rosenberg and art by Carmine Di Domenico. And Rosenberg's someone who I've been a fan of his Marvel work. So
yeah, we spoke about this a couple episodes ago, I think. When he was on another book, probably maybe one of the Endless Winter things, perhaps something recently that he was on the DC, and we kind of spoke about how it was interesting seeing him, kind of come over to this side for a bit.
Yeah, and Jean-Paul Leon variant cover, I'm also on board with. Pretty much always. Same day as that, you got Future State Robin Eternal issue 1, and that is a regular price, regular size 2-issue book. So issue 1 January, issue 2 February. That's McGann Fitzmartin rating with Eddie Barrows on the art. I'm not.
It's just Megan. That's the American spelling.
What's the H for?
I don't know.
Hey, some people might say McGann.
They don't. It's just me. It's Megan.
Hey, Miss Martian is McGann.
Yes, that has an apostrophe.
Still, I'm going with McGann. All right. Piss off. Leave me alone. So yes, this is your Robin 2-issue book.
I don't know which Robin it is. Do you?
I'm not familiar with Fitzmartin. It looks like Damien on the cover to me, but I mean,
I'm just reading the solicit. It apparently it's Tim.
Oh, it's Tim.
I did not have that pegged as Tim.
It looks more Damien-esque in the cover. I mean, the hair and even just his height and stuff. But again, there's not a lot to for scale, admittedly. But
yeah,
it looks more thingy to me.
I agree.
So I mean, it's worth mentioning. So even though some of these books are very big, it seems to only be about 2 a week. Well, at least of the Batman. Obviously, once we add in the Superman books, I mean, it got up to 4.
Yeah.
But
add in that, and then a handful of Black Label books. That there might be a reasonable amount each week. I don't know.
Yeah, but how many Black Label books do we realistically get a week? It seems to me that the max we're going to have a week is 6 books, just based on what we've read so far.
We'll find out. Yeah.
Next up, Future State, next Batman issue 2. That's January 19th, so we're at the 3rd week of the Bat books. So more next Batman, and then more importantly, Batgirls, written by Vita Ilea and art by Aniki. I'm not sure you pronounce that name, I do apologize. But what have I been asking for the last 4 goddamn years?
Yeah, and it does confirm in the solicits that it is Cass and Steph.
Oh, baby, it's Christmas.
Yeah, and the other story as well, we have a Gotham City Sirens story with by Paula Sevenbergen and my model Lupicino.
Schevenbergen. You gotta say it like a Swedish person. Schevenbergen. No?
Did I put extra H's in?
I don't know.
I feel like you've just kind of thrown that in out of nowhere.
Schevenbergen. I don't know. I can just see like a Swedish person saying that really quickly. Yes, and Lupicino on the art, of course, on that one. So, again...
It's interesting to me out of those issues so far.
Mm-hmm.
The next Batman is the one that's presumably going to be in each issue of the 4.
I'll be curious,
and then it'll be 2 each for the other stories.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see if it just matches in the next month, so that the first issue will have part 2s of the other 2 in the first one, and then part 2 of Batgirls and Gotham City Sirens will be in
kind of my expectation right now.
It hooks you though if you really just want one of them. It's hooking you for at least one of the other issues. Yeah. And if you're going to have like 3 parts of next Batman because you've already bought 1 and 2, well, you might as well buy the other one too, so you can read the whole of that story.
Yeah, the idea is, well, maybe you don't care about next Batman for whatever reason. Really, what you want is Batgirls, and then you have to buy 2 and 4. But then the temptation is, well, you've got all of Gotham City Sirens, so you might as well read that. And then you're like, now I kind of want to try the next Batman because I've got half the story.
Might be genius, honestly, when you think about it. So notably though, this is the same size, same price as the other issue, so it isn't going down after issue 1 or anything like that. So it's going to be consistent.
All 4 issues presumably are going to be this triple size.
So then you got Future State Catwoman on the same day, January 19th. Ram V writing, Otto Schmidt on art. Notably, this is the artist, or the writer that's on the regular book. It's cool. And it's been also been Schmidt on something, now thinking about it. So that's cool.
He's been off doing Marvel work, I think, for a while.
The traitor.
In fact, I think I've just been reading him on the Hawkeye book that Rosenberg wrote, Freefall.
So this is, again, kind of in line. And I like this system, now that I'm looking through this, is that the big book seems to be accompanied by a regular size book every week, at least in this family. So this is regular size, 2 issues,
Yeah.
There's a clear pattern here emerging. Although there's actually a third one I spoke too soon. Same day, January 19th, Future State Nightwing issue 1. Again, 2 issues, regular sized. But I mean, again, it's regular sized versus, so it's not like they're putting it like, at least in the Bat family. I'm assuming there's going to be a big Superman book to go with it, but at least there's not going to be like multiple big Bat books and multiple big Justice League Superman books. So this is Andrew Constant writing with art by Nicholas Scott. Nicholas Scott on Nightwing, and I have to say that cover that I'm seeing there, which I think is probably the Putri cover.
Yeah, the Scott cover's the variant, which is also very nice.
Oh, they're both good actually.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've seen Nicholas Scott on Nightwing. Obviously, she's
I have to say, I'm liking that Nightwing outfit. It's just got a little bit of the shoulder paddy kind of thing going for it.
Yeah. I'm not feeling the chin strap, admittedly.
The chin strap, yeah, I could take or leave, but I'm liking just a little bit of the armor look to the blue parts.
Yeah. I would expect a very sexy Nightwing look, essentially. I mean, Nicholas Scott is the one that started the whole Nightwing's ass running gag. That's from her art. Oh. So I would expect more along those lines.
And then we get to January 26th, which has Future State Batman Superman issue 1 with Jean Lun Yang writing with Ben Oliver on the art. Yeah, that's cool. Again, that's regular size, 2 issues, simple stuff. Also January 26th. Why didn't put this first this time? This is the only time they've put the bigger book second in the solicits.
I don't know why.
But Future State Dark Detective issue 2 is January 26th, as expected, which has Dark Detective continued by Tamaki and Mora. And then the second story in this one, again, alternating, much like the other book, is Red Hood, written by Joshua Williamson and art by Giannis Milo de Gigannis. It's for some long name.
Do you know what I'm going to tell you? I'm going to make it easy for you. It's Greek. It's a Greek name. Oh, so I don't know how to say it, but he's actually Greek.
So it's an ancient name, and therefore ancient Greek names are stupid.
This is the artist I really like. He did Ronin Island with Pac, I think at Boom. You read a couple of issues, I think, Pete.
Yeah. I'll refer to him simply as G. Me and G are good buddies. I'll call him G.
That seems fair. I mean, it's really conflicting that because it's like Red Hood, but then it's Williamson and this artist G, as we shall say, who I do really like. So that's frustrating.
You're going to have the book out because you're going to be reading the Tamaki stories, so...
That's true, so...
you might as well.
Yeah.
So that wraps up the Bat books for the month of January. The Bat family books, I should say. So, it's not actually as much as I thought it was going to be when I sort of glanced at the article. I was like, okay, so it's like a big book each week and a little book, with that 1 week exception of having a third one.
I'm kind of waiting to see how much is on the other family.
We're about to find out. So, Superman family, the paragraph at the top of this one's a bit bigger, so let me read this. Due to his involvement in an international crisis happening in the near future, Clark Kent has been rejected by Earth, causing him to focus on his life-saving efforts outside his adopted home. He travels to Warworld to rise through the ranks of gladiatorial combat in order to defeat Mongol, with the help of some unlikely heroes. Back in Metropolis, Clark's son John has taken on the mantle of Superman. After seeing the horrors that befell Gotham, he bottles Metropolis in order to keep it safe, putting him at odds with Supergirl. Connecting the two, actually, I won't read that next part because we'll just get to that in the solicits. But no, interesting.
Yeah, and I will say, Newsarama is terrible at formatting this, because this time the comics in the solicits are not in order of when they come out, or at least if they are, they're just kind of all over the place.
Well, we'll just take it as it comes. So, first up here, very pretty cover for Future State Kara Zor-El Superwoman issue 1. That's an interesting title. Margaret Bennett writing, with Margaret Savage, probably said that wrong, on the art. That's regular size, 2 issues. You can kind of guess this with some of these, just kind of, you can see what the main 2 books are going to be. You got Future State Superman of Metropolis. Oh, okay, actually I should mention what that first one is. That first one is on the 12th of January, so that's week 2. So yeah, these are just out of order. So the next book up is Future State Superman of Metropolis issue 1. So this is their Superman replacement. This is a $6, 48-page book. Main story, Superman of Metropolis, written by Sean Lewis and art by John Timms. And then you've got 2 other stories in this one. The Guardian, written by also Sean Lewis, with art by Cully Hammer. And then Mr. Miracle, written by Brandon Easton, with art by Valentin D. Landro. Sorry. So
just to say, it's a Cully Hamner. It's an N, not 2 M's. I know he has a personal pet hatred of that. So just in case he catches this, I apologize on Pete's behalf.
I'm not going to lie. When you glance at that name, it looks like 2 M's.
He gets quite annoyed. I know, because he goes like actual cons, and they'll put up like on their their guides of the maps of where everyone is, and they'll put it with 2 M's.
See, part of me wants to be a dick and call him Cully MC Hammer now, just to really drive it home.
I'm sure he's heard it before.
So much like the Bat books, this one, it's not an $8 book. Maybe that's going to be the one outlier of being that big, unless the Justice League one coming up is. But
yeah, I think what's interesting about this compared to the Bat book is this is smaller, so it's 48 pages, so it's double instead of the triple.
It's the same size. It's the same size as the Detective one.
It is, but this has 3 stories in it, whereas the smaller Detective one only had 2.
This is true.
So each story is going to be a bit shorter.
I would probably go further and say that the main story will probably be regular size, and then the other 2 will be a bit shorter. That'd be my guess, but I mean,
very possible.
Could go either way, especially with one of them being written by the same writer as the main story. I could see that being a little bit on the shorter side.
And this one does have some connective tissue, because just at the end of the solicit, this is the bit of the paragraph you didn't quite get to on the other one. It mentions the current Mr. Miracle, Shiloh Norman, is in the bottle, and is looking for a way out. But this story continues in Superman Worlds of War, which we'll get to.
I think all the super books are going to have some connective tissue. I think all the Bat books will have some connective tissue. The Bat books have the Magistrate stuff. This clearly has the connections between Warworld and Metropolis being bottled, and
yeah, this seems a little bit more direct, as opposed to just they're in the same scenario. This has a direct this will continue in a different book.
Oh sure, but I'm kind of assuming that when we actually read the Bat books, that eventually there's going to be a lot more.
There might well be
ties between them. Just not right away. Next up, Future State Superman versus Imperious Lex. I'm going to say Emperor Lex. Imperious Lex. So this is regular sized issue. Interestingly, one of 3. This is a 3-issue book, so clearly there's going to be a double ship in one of the ones. We'll find out if it's this one. But this is Mark Russell writing with Steve Pugh on the art.
This is on the 26th.
Yeah, so you're a fan of Pugh, so it'll have to be February then. It's double shipping, obviously, if this is at the end of the month.
Yeah.
Regular size though, $4, 32 pages.
It makes sense if you're going to double ship it in the second month to start this one late, because then you can still do it every 2 weeks.
Yeah, it feels like it's every other week. Yeah, at that point.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. Then we have Future State Superman Worlds of War, which is the one that was mentioned. I assume this is still a big one. It is indeed. Although notably, this is only 2 issues, so this is the $8 equivalent to the Bat book, but there's only 2 of them, so it's just one per month, I assume. We'll find out if I'm wrong as we go, but so the stories in here are Superman Worlds of War by Philip Kennedy Johnson with art by Mikel Janin. So,
oh yes, please.
Nice art on that at least.
Philip Kennedy Johnson is writing the Last God, which is the grimdark fantasy book from Black Label that you like to overlook in the Solicits. So I'm looking forward to that for sure.
Liking that I overlook it would imply that I notice it exists. It does not live rent free in my mind. I am sorry to say. Midnighter is a second story written by Michael W. Conrad with art by Becky Cloonan.
No.
Oh, sorry.
Co-written by Becky Cloonan.
Co-written by Becky Cloonan. Yes, I saw my mistake as I was reading it. All right, give me a split second to actually address what I just said. Okay. Sometimes my mouth moves faster than my brain's functioning. I have to get to the end of my sentence and recalibrate.
You need to drink more Monster or Rockstar, whatever it is you've got at the minute.
I don't drink Rockstar, right? I'm not a chump. Okay, Rockstar is piss water. Okay.
I don't disagree.
Absolute piss water. Okay. And then the third story is Black Racer, written by Jeremy Adams and art by Sia. I'm probably butchering that name, so I do apologize.
Just to say, the art on Midnight was Gleb Melkinoff.
And notably, there was actually the fourth story is Mr. Miracle, so that actually is directly just having another chapter in this book.
Yeah.
Brandon Easton, Valentine D. Landro again on the art. So that's interesting. That's maybe a little. So unlike the Bat books, there's not going to be like 4 of each. There's 4 of one and 2 of the other in Superman. But notably, they're being a little bit cheeky and having a story that's going through all of them, so that you might not have to buy them all.
It's interesting because as much as that Mr. Miracle starts in the other issue and then kind of comes into here, these books feel a little less connected than the Gotham ones by the nature of, well, we're dealing with Superman out on Warworld, but also, John and Kara back on Earth. It feels like there's 2 very different sections of the Superman family going on. And
if you ever wanted your sexy pin-up, Hercules-looking Superman outfit, the cover's got it for you.
Yeah, it's that's the artist on that Last God book who does that cover.
Very good.
Yeah, very kind of painted style. Alex Ross-esque, I would say.
And then next up, you got Future State Superman Wonder Woman issue 1. This is a regular size, 2 issues. Dan Waters writing with Lila Del Duca, maybe Ducha, on the art.
Ducha,
yeah. So I'm just actually trying to see who the Wonder Woman is in this, because
that is Yara Flor. She's the new one that's in. We'll get to it in the Wonder Woman book.
Okay, so this is not something I should know from before. Good. Future State Justice League issue 1 is next. And this is another oversized book, not the $8 though, $6 variety, 48 pages. A couple of different stories here. We got Justice League, written by Joshua Williamson with art by Robson Roca and Daniel Henrique. And then we've got Justice League Dark, written by Ram V with art by Marcio Takara. So that's obviously the current Justice League Dark writer.
That's great. I would say we should probably take a quick break and read the paragraph for the Justice League.
Oh, is there a separate paragraph on this thing? I didn't realize.
Yes. There's the Justice League family still.
Here we go. Okay. Sorry, separate batch here. A thread of great changes runs through the Justice League heroes. A new league is built upon secret identities, even from each other. But an old and evolved enemy will use these secrets to try and overthrow the world. For the supernatural heroes of Justice League Dark, the very fabric of reality has shifted, and heroes are being hunted. For Flash, Shazam, and the Teen Titans, it all begins with the 4 Riders of the Apocalypse unleashing hell in the battle at Titans Academy. Barry Allen is cut off from the Speed Force. A famine-controlled Wally West may be beyond saving. And Billy Batson makes a deal with the devil that will change Shazam forever. Off-world, Jon Stewart and the remaining Green Lanterns are stranded in the shadow of a dead power battery. Jackson Hyde and Andy Curry are separated across the galaxy, and Amanda Waller executes her ultimate plan with a new but terrifyingly familiar Suicide Squad on Earth 3. At the end of time, Swamp Thing reveals its true intention, ruling supreme until the remnant of humanity launches a rebellion. and Black Adam looks to the past as the only way to save the future of the multiverse. So obviously, that's a bit of a catch-all because there's so many characters to cover in terms of
that
what we're talking about.
Black Adam sounds surprisingly interesting in terms of kind of perhaps being more important than that it kind of just suggests there in terms of getting back to the status quo at the end of this event, possibly.
So, yeah, maybe Black Adam's the reason why it does get back to normal, if it is indeed something that should be fixed. So, yeah, the cover of this Justice League is really interesting, seeing sort of like who's on it, if we can even tell who some of them are. But that definitely looks like Joe is the Green Lantern there.
It is. It's Joe and John. Obviously, this is the new woman, Wonder Woman. Sorry, and the new Batman. Presumably, this is the Luke Fox Batman. What we didn't mention really in the Batman Solicits is the Dark Detective shows a completely different Batman as well. So we have two Batmen running around.
Okay. So this could be the second Batman.
No, I think this is the Luke Fox one.
This is the Luke Fox one. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Actually, I'll read this list of first one because it seems like it actually tells us who. So, starring John Kent as Superman, Yara Flor as Wonder Woman, Joe Mullen as Green Lantern, Andy Curry as Aquawoman. Oh, that's his daughter. I just realized who Andy.
Yeah, did you not realize?
Yeah, I just clicked. Oh, she's a redhead and everything. Yeah, she's taking after her mother.
I mean, yeah, I was gonna say.
A new Flash from the multiverse and redacted as Batman. I don't know.
That's because they still officially haven't told us that Luke Fox is going to be a Batman, although everyone kind of knows, right?
That makes
We've
me
been thinking about it for months.
That could be the other one, just because I don't know. I feel like they know we know, so it seems weird for them to.
I would agree, but the other one you can see like half of his face.
Okay, all right. Okay. All right, and then you got Future State Aquaman issue 1. This is a regular size, price, 2 issues. Written by Brandon Thomas, art by Daniel Sempier. This is yes.
Yeah. 26th.
I don't have much to add on it.
No.
Then we got Future State, The Flash issue 1. This is regular size, 2 issues, written by Brandon VA and art by Dale Eaglesham. So
I like Eaglesham.
Yeah. And this is Wally West that's in this, so that's
with a gorgeous Carrie Andrews variant, I will say.
Yes. Although it does look like Wally West is a bit evil in this.
Well, that was implied in that paragraph, which is kind of I rolled my eyes at that point because I'm like, God damn it, again already.
I mean, we'll see what they're doing. I don't know. But VA, we're looking at you.
I mean, with no powers, no backup, and no other choice, Barry Allen and the other former Flashes face the deadliest threat they've ever encountered, Wally West.
This bothers me less than Heroes in Crisis, though, because it's like a weird future thing that we're going to undo.
I get that. I feel kind of how you were talking about with Babs kind of just being the token woman, a few weeks ago. I kind of feel that here with Wally West. Like, in a vacuum, this wouldn't be a problem, and this does inherently bother me less than Heroes in Crisis because this one doesn't matter really, but it's just again already. I just want a goddamn Wally West story.
Yep. Well, next up, we actually have another oversized book, 48 pages, $6. Green Lanterns, taken up here. This is just Future State Green Lantern issue 1. Nothing fancy. First story is called The Last Lanterns by Jeffrey Thorne and art by Tom Rainey. And then we have The Book of Guy, written by Ernie Altbacker. Yeah. We got The Last Lanterns by art by Clayton. Well, I'm confused here. There's no artist for The Book of Guy and there's no writer for The Last Lanterns. Is this a mistake?
I assume that it could be a case of the.
I get the feeling here that this is actually the team. The Ernie and Clayton here are going to be the team on The Book of Guy or The Last Lanterns. One of those is the wrong title. That's what I'm going to guess.
I think The Book of Guy, because it's only this second Last Lanterns that seems to be the mistake.
Okay. So then you have The Taking of Sector 123, which is a fantastic pun, and if you've not heard of the movie, The Taking of Pelham 123, it's a play on that. Written by Ryan Cady and art by Sami Basri. So I guess it's nice for Green Lantern to get maybe a little oversized treatment as well.
It'll be the most Green Lantern you've read in years.
It literally will, yes. It will. And it's interesting, this is how we're getting Joe in some way into the mix with the rest of the characters. Even though it's not present-day continuity, it is kind of interesting.
I don't think Joe's in this issue.
Oh, I wasn't even implying that. I just meant in general with the Justice League stuff.
these stories, we've got the Jon Stewart trapped. We mentioned that. It mentions Jessica Cruz versus Sinestro Corps, and then Guy Gardner deciding to reopen the Warriors Bar. The three stories.
And then we have Future State Immortal Wonder Woman issue 1, and I have to say this is the first one out of all of these, I think, where I definitely do not prefer the variant over the main cover. I think the main cover is gorgeous, and then
that's because the main cover is Jen Bartel, and it's
but
freaking fantastic.
Usually the variants will at least go blow for blow, if not be better, and I don't like that variant.
I don't dislike the variant. It's a very different style, but Bartel is like one of the top cover artists working in the industry right now, and she's actually on interiors in this issue as well, which is exciting. Much
like the Green Lantern one, this is also oversized, only 2 issues though, $6 for 8 pages. You have Immortal Wonder Woman by Michael W. Conrad and Becky Cloonan, with art by Jen Bartel. And then you have Nubia, written by L.L. McKinney and art by Aletha Martinez and Mark Morales. So, so I think it makes sense that Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, and Justice League get, maybe not the $8 books, but they get their own $6.
Yeah, and I believe there's another Wonder Woman book somewhere coming up, because there's one that's about the new Wonder Woman, because this is Diana still, this issue.
Sure. I just meant it was nice for those characters to also get that prestige of having.
They deserve that, yeah.
The one shots. If anything, I feel
just the team on the next issue. Sorry.
If anything, I feel like Flash is the one that's maybe a missing one at this point, unless one pops up. Future State Legion of Superheroes issue 1 is next, and it's Bryan Michael Bendis and Riley Rosmo, regular size, 2 issues.
It's like, what team can you throw at a book that will make me absolutely despise it?
I've got a funny feeling I know what one of our patrons is going to make you read in January.
No, look, they've got so much choice that they could make me read. So much stuff.
Yeah, we should mention there is a size limit. I mean, he's going to read the $8 Batman book anyway, but the $8 books would actually be over the limit. But as long as it's under the that $6 page count, you're good.
like 48 pages.
That's fine. Annual size is fine for those Patreon books, but this one's a regular size though, so this is fine. You're maybe getting less for your money's worth in page count, but I mean, the hatred per page is going to be off the charts.
It's true.
I may not even read this one.
Oh, don't do that to me.
It'll just be Connor reading it.
You gotta read it. This might be the capper to Bendis's Legion run.
I've already stopped reading it.
Oh yeah, I forgot about
that. Next up, we got Future State Shazam issue 1, regular size, two issues. I have to say, I love that variant cover. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, it is.
Absolutely gorgeous. This is Tim Sheridan writing with Eduardo Pansica on the art. And, it encourages me that this and a couple of other books, the Superwoman book with Kara, it does encourage me that some of these books that recently ended are getting these minis here to maybe suggest that there is a plan for them going forward, that they're not just being abandoned for good.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. Again, just reading the solicit. I'm not going to read it all, but it mentions in a story set years after the events of Future State Teen Titans. So this is a weird follow-on to another one of these future states. It's even further in the future, which I think is interesting because, okay, maybe not all of these books are happening at the same time. Maybe there are others that are a little bit different as well.
Sure, maybe.
Potentially interesting. Maybe like that Justice League book where it said that they didn't necessarily all know each other's identities. For example, maybe they don't know who Batman is, but then in the Batman Superman book might be set after that, and they do know each other now by that point. Could be interesting.
Yeah. And then after that, we have Future State Suicide Squad issue 1. And this is a $6. Do you know what? This one, if you'd asked me to predict which ones were going to get the $6 treatment, Suicide Squad would have been borderline. I don't know if I'd have picked it in the list.
I think it's like plausible enough because they love to kind of sell Suicide Squad.
I get
it's been like an ongoing book for like a decade at this point, right?
I wouldn't have predicted this was one of the ones that got a $6 book, but I'm not surprised it does either. It's kind of on that weird line where I can see it going either way. But anyway, main story is just called Suicide Squad, written by Robbie Thompson, art by Javi Fernandez, and then we have Black Adam, written by Jeremy Adams and art by Fernando Passarin. So, well as a couple of the main writers, Ram V is the one who's sticking out to me for the most part, to be honest. other than that, I'm not seeing a lot of the regular teams on these. Maybe Bendis on the Legion book, I suppose. But
yeah, what's interesting about this one is Passarin has been doing Hawkman, and obviously Black Adam has a lot of history with Hawkman. Just to make it interesting, we talked about maybe this would be the one that kind of linked back. This seems to be set way further in the future because this is, Black Adam rules the planet Kandak in the 853rd century.
Oh, interesting. Well, I mean, it seems like all the Bat books and Super books are in correlation with each other. Maybe some of these other Justice League books and solo characters are a bit more separate and are just whatever.
Yeah.
Wherever they want to set them. And then next up, we have Future State Swamp Thing, which is 2 issues, regular size. Ram V on Swamp Thing. Now, this I can get behind.
Ram V and Mike Perkins, who did the wraparound. So if you liked their stuff in that issue last week, then here's more of that for you.
Yes.
And I believe this has Etrigan in it. One of the things that Ram V is doing has Etrigan in it because he was tweeting about it, and I was excited.
I don't particularly give a shit about Etrigan. I don't dislike Etrigan. He's fine, but I'm not. So it's not something
that
excites me.
Give me all of the Etrigan.
Sometimes the rhyming can get on my nerves a little bit. There we have Future State Teen Titans issue 1, regular size, 2 issues. Tim Sheridan writing with Rafa Sandoval on the art.
Yeah, this has been getting some attention just because it's introducing Red X, who was a character from the Teen Titans Go TV show and hasn't made their way to comics yet.
Interesting. So. And then we have Future State Wonder Woman, not to be confused with Immortal Wonder Woman, which was the one from earlier. This is regular size, 2 issues, but it is Joelle Jones, both writing and art. And of course, this is the new Wonder Woman that it's focusing on. And that does wrap up the Future State solicits. So there was quite a lot in there. I hate that this didn't put them in order, so I could just sort of group them by week in my head as we were going.
Yeah, I feel like I want to just jot them down quickly and see how bad it actually looks.
I don't think it's too bad. I feel
it's hard to say.
How did I say? I'll do it. See, unlike Connor before the start of this, I know how to use Control Find. So I'm going to.
Oh, you gotta do each date.
We'll just going to do the first one. I'm not going to do all of them. I'm not mad. What's the first Wednesday or Tuesday?
I think it's the 5th.
The 5th. Okay, it's the 5th. Yes. Right. So now we know the Bat books because it's easy to remember. It was 1 oversized book, 1 regular size book. For these books, we have the $6 Superman book on that day. We have the regular priced Flash book. We have the regular price Swamp Thing book, the regular price Wonder Woman book, and that's it. So that's your first week.
So that's about 5 or 6 issues.
1 supersized in the Bat book, 1 oversized Superman book, and then 4 regular size.
4 more, yeah.
That sounds reasonable to me.
That's a healthy amount to read because that's assuming you read all of them.
It's healthy, but it's not like, oh my god, what is this week?
Yeah, it's about 9 issues worth of content. I think it breaks down to that particular week. Maybe some other weeks will be a bit more. I don't know.
There could be at least 1 Black Label book that week too, but we'll get to that in a minute. But
yeah,
but in terms of the main line, there is less books overall. Now, admittedly, because we are nuts and we're going to be more tempted to try most of these, I imagine it might actually end up that we read more, but that's just because we're mad and we like this stuff. But
there's a lot of creators I don't know, which means that I can't go, oh, I don't want to read that because I don't like this person.
Yeah, you have to take a risk, and
I've got to take the gamble. Yeah,
and sometimes it'll pay off, and sometimes it will not, and you'll learn some lessons.
But we'll know. I can't even say for sure I'll know for the future because one example isn't really enough to rule someone out entirely, unless it's atrocious.
Yes, for patrons of paying attention, there's a Bendis Rosmo book, which I think Connor
there's not. That will be forgotten about by January.
So just to dive into the rest of the solicits that are separate from all this, it's mostly other things. So for example, we got American Vampire 1976 issue 4. That's continuing, not much to say. Batman Black and White issue 2. I forgot this was a thing.
Yeah, with David Aja is doing a story in this one.
This is this is issue 2 of 6 is what I'm trying to say. And the $6 book, obviously it's an anthology style. We got Tom King, Gabriel Hardman, Karina Beckel, David Aja, Sophie Campbell and Dustin Weaver, all the writing stories. We also got art by Mitch Gerads, Gabriel Hardman. I do like Hardman's art, actually. I don't know whether his name came up recently, but I did come up recently because I remember praising the Green Lantern Earth 1 book.
It did come up recently. I remember that. Unless it was in issue 1 of this and he's got a second story. I don't know.
Yeah. In fact, notably, the rest of the names here, with the exception of Gerads, who's presumably with Tom King, the rest of them are, for the most part, just the same people doing their own art. So,
which is actually very common in the Batman black and white of old. It was often the artists getting a chance to tell a short story of their own. Which
I get it, because, I mean, it's kind of an artist-focused concept in a weird way. That said, though, they should let Tom King draw his own story, you cowards. So... You got Batman: The Adventures Continue, issue 8. Oh, that's continuing. You got Batman: The White Knight Presents Harley Quinn, issue 4. So that's continuing. Batman Catwoman is going on during this, so that's not pausing, which makes sense. It's Black Label, it's out of continuity. It's weird
because it is Black Label, but it feels more connected, right, than some of the others. I mean, in the same way that Strange Adventures does.
Yeah, I'd say it feels even more connected than that, in the sense that maybe it's not technically outright continuity, but it does feel like a possible ending continuity to his Batman run. If you want to accept this as your ending, this will function there.
It feels almost like because Bendis did this with Daredevil, right? Where he did obviously a pretty healthy Daredevil run, and then he came back a few years later and did I don't know what that story was called, but he did one set in the future. It was
End of Days, I think, or something like that.
End of Days, yeah. It was almost like a Dark Knight Returns style like ending for the outcome of maybe his Daredevil.
Yeah. But apparently Phantasm's been teased for other things as well coming up, so I guess we're getting Phantasm properly in comics coming soon. Not to be confused with the movie Phantasm, although I would enjoy that.
I watched that for the first time last week, and it was rather good.
It's fantastic. Oh, the music's so good.
The music was... Do you know what? I've never heard anyone talk about the music in Phantasm. I just hear, it's the Silver Bolt. That's all I knew about it, and that people liked it. And then the music was so good.
And then the second one, Aliens is up and it turns into like an action theme. It's great.
Do you know what? Annoyingly, I don't think Shudder has the second one. It's got like 3, 4, and 5, but not the second one.
Yeah, two was Universal, so 2's rights always end up being different.
Bastards. Do I need to watch 2?
Yeah, 2's good.
God damn it.
It's good in a different way, though. Phantasm 2 is kind of like Aliens to Alien.
But what I mean is when you get to like Phantasm 3 then and onwards... Is it like you probably should have watched 2, or is it more like this is closer to 1?
You should watch 2 because it's easily the second best one.
All right, good answer.
And 3 is the third best one, and then after that is
just don't bother, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean 5 was dreadful, and 4 is like mostly deleted scenes from the first one, and it feels like it.
Really? That's
they had like hours and hours of deleted footage because when they shot the first one, and they basically formed a story around him remembering stuff. So it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting though because it's all this footage of him still as a kid, even though he's an adult now. So it's kind of impressive in that sense. Like, oh hey, this is so weird. They actually have all this real footage of him, in character at this age still. That we've never seen before.
It's unique,
but it's still not really a movie.
not very good, is what you're saying.
And 5 is just a complete mess. 3 was a lot more fun than I remembered though when I watched it like last year or so.
I'll maybe track down 2 and then jump onto 3 and kind of maybe stop there.
I mean 2 is the one that has the formation of the quadruple barrel shotgun, and you're going to be so confused in 3 if you don't see how that thing is formed. So.
Oh, will I? I'll be so confused by the fact that there is a quadruple barrel shotgun. I can't just take that as fact.
You need the montage of where he duct tapes the 2 shotguns together. It's important.
When you said formation, I thought this was like some like super impressive thing, not duct tape. I could have figured out duct tape them together.
I'm exaggerating. It's not actual. He actually makes like a handle for it so you can cock them at the same time. So there's a bit more to it than just duct tape.
Do they look duct taped?
No, it looks good. Well, that's good. Anyway, Deceased Dead Planet issue 7. So that's wrapping up in January, believe it or not. So obviously there's no need to describe what that is. It's more Deceased.
Yeah.
Although, do we have another movie variant? We do. Oh, it's the Birds of Prey poster.
I quite like it.
But they're getting boring now, just taking the DC movies.
No, I agree. They ran out a little bit ago, let's be honest, of what they had access to, what they owned.
Warner Brothers has been making movies since the goddamn 30s. They've got tons of options.
Let me rephrase. They ran out of things on theme. and decided to just go. Look. We all know there's going to be another deceased book after this, and they've got to save things. They need something impressive for at least the first couple of the next deceased book to sell gangbusters.
I'm looking up at my shelf right now. They didn't do Road Warrior. They didn't do Logan's Run. They didn't do.
Do you know what? Road Warrior, I don't think is that exciting a poster for them to do, but Logan's Run probably would have been a good one.
Yeah, there's tons of options.
Well, get on the phone to. Martina did this one. No, didn't. Ben Oliver did this one.
Time Cop. Where's my Time Cop poster?
Do you know what? I'll give you that one. Just take solace in the fact that they're saving it for the third/4th deceased book.
All right. The Dreaming Waking Hours issue 6. That's coming. And then you got Joker Harley Criminal Sanity issue 7. So that's going. As per usual, pretty cover. But
yeah, I mean, that's to be expected.
Yeah. Last God issue 12 is there. See, I remembered it. Looney Tunes issue 258. Mad Magazine 18. Other History of the DC Universe. This is buried down here for some reason. That's issue 205, the John Ridley book, which we're definitely going to be checking out when it hits in December. And we got Rorschach issue 4. Obviously, we're doing issue 1 today, so I'll save any of my thoughts on that until we get there. But that's there. We got Sweet Tooth, the Return issue 3. Harley Quinn, the Birds of Prey, the Hunt for Harley. That's obviously right at the young adult. But is it? No, is this the collection of the? It's the collection. Yeah, this is a trade. Yeah, this is the collection of the that recent Palmiotti series. Yeah, I thought we were on to the young adult books.
Do you know what's bizarre? I must be going crazy because when I skimmed these at some point, either yesterday or earlier today, I could have sworn the final issue of Metal was included in these solicits. Yeah, it's not. I'm not seeing it now, so I don't know what I was looking at earlier.
Didn't I get advanced solicits?
I think it did, but because I remember thinking I was confused as to why are they throwing this in again, unless it was a Newsarama have edited it out, which is possible.
Which would be weird, but yes. So if there is anything missing because they've taken things out, please be aware of such a thing. Interestingly, the trade for Joker War, which is the Joker War saga, does include a lot of the tie-in stuff. You got Batman 95 to 100, Batgirl 47, Detective Comics 1025, Red Hood 48, Nightwing 74, Joker Warzone issue 1, which would make sense, obviously, and stories from Harley Quinn 75 and Catwoman 25. So they're doing a nice big beefy book. It's a hardcover. I said trade, it's actually a hardcover, but same difference.
It is. I'm just looking to see if there's anything else interesting in the trades this month, because sometimes stuff kind of surprises me because I don't keep up on all the trades as much as I probably should to get the actual good deals, because these all go on Amazon long before they're actually solicited in here.
Oh, sure, yeah.
There is the Swamp Thing New 52 omnibus, which is all of the Snyder stuff with the Jeff Lemire tie-ins from Animal Man and the Soul stuff that followed as well, if you want everything.
Yes, I would suggest save your money, go get the Snyder Complete Collection, and you can ignore the stuff that came after. There you go.
Well, the Snyder Complete Collection is very good value for the amount of content it is, and it's a great story. And you should, if you haven't got that, it's worth a read. If you're interested in the Soul stuff, it's pretty good. So this is also good.
This makes me sad.
What?
There's a hardcover called Green Arrow 80 Years of the Emerald Archer, and I'm like, wait, you're not going to do like an 80th anniversary special for Green Arrow? Like,
I honestly think they would have done if things hadn't gone tits up this year.
Okay.
I think it changed a lot of their plans as to what they're going to print. Maybe they heard us complaining about fatigue of these every goddamn month.
I saw a really discerning tweet actually from Sterling Gates like last week, which is because last year was Supergirl's 60th anniversary, and they'd done a couple of things for some of the other characters for their 80th, and apparently at a con he asked like an executive at DC or Warner Brothers, like, are you doing anything for Supergirl's 60th? And apparently the response was, she has a TV show. That's all the celebration she needs.
That's so shitty.
I know. So I'm just concerned that Green Arrow's getting kind of he's getting this hardcover, sure, but he's got no book right now. He's not getting.
And there's no Future State Green Arrow. Or at least he might be buried in one of the other books, don't get me wrong, but he hasn't got his own thing.
So I think that's notable. They continue with those Bronze Age volumes, which is good. For Swamp Thing, that is. So
Do you know what, there was enough in this section that I think we read between, like, Batman Black and White we're probably going to check out, Batman Catwoman, Deceased, Rorschach, that it might add up to a reasonable amount each week. Especially as we're probably going to be trying pretty much everything from Future State, right?
most probably. Yeah, it probably works out to be a Black Label book a week, as long as they don't all bunch up in one week, the bastards, like, which they're prone to maybe do.
Yeah, like 2 Tom King Black Label books this week.
Yes, which wasn't a big deal this week, but it may be a problem in January if there's a...
Yeah, and obviously there is no Strange Adventures in January. I think, is that going bi-monthly?
I don't think so. Maybe they're just taking the 1 month off.
Yeah, because obviously they're taking
hold on.
a month off.
Let me go check the solicits, because there was a few advanced solicits for the first week of January, so it may just be in that batch. Hold on.
Oh, you're right. It could be. I kind of forget about that. Do you know what? I hate it when they do that, because you do get confused. Like, oh, where's this book? Where's that? It's just, it was in December's solicits for no real reason.
Yeah, I'll just do a wee control F here. So you want 12, because that's to be the American way round, because the date's stupid. Well, it's not 12, it's 1. Hold on.
It'd be 1,
it's
yeah.
a 0, 1.
I don't even know if they put 0. I think they just put 1.
Just 1. Okay. And then...
1/ should cover
1/5. Nah, because there's something in, like, one of the number codes, because I tried that, and it went to something else. So the advanced solicits for January from last month were Generation Shattered issue 1, which is in the first week.
Which is what a lot of Future State is probably spinning out of, I think.
I imagine so, yeah. So that'll probably be the first thing we talk about that week. Death Metal 7 is that week, so...
So it'll probably be Death Metal first, then then Generations, then the Future State. That's going to be a busy week.
Strange Adventures issue 8 that week.
Okay, so that week...
That first week is pretty big. That first week is pretty big, I'll give you...
I think we worked out 9 issues worth of content from the other stuff was on the first week. Plus... Metal, I'm assuming, is oversized for its last issue. I could be wrong, but I'm just going out on a limb.
I can tell. I'm on the page. I can tell you.
Okay.
Watch your horses. It's a little oversized. It's a little oversized. It's 48 pages.
Okay, so it's double. So that's 11 issues worth. Generations that's definitely oversized, right? That's got to be.
I saw it when I first looked at it, and I neglected to mention it because I didn't want to scare you.
Go on.
It's 80 pages.
Right, okay. 80 pages. That's another 4 issues worth. So we're at 15 issues worth, plus Strange Adventures, which is like 1.5. So 16.5, plus anything that happened to be in that main solicits that was not advanced for this week. I don't know if there was anything, admittedly, that we're reading. No, just the Dreaming and Batman Adventures.
Nah.
So, but I mean, yeah, that's a bloody hefty week.
It's an exciting week though, because it's funny because sometimes
nothing in it is bad. Nothing's there going, oh, I don't want to read that.
Sometimes,
like, damn it.
Sometimes you get a big week like that, and it'll make you question a couple of those smaller books that you maybe not been as hot on. You're like, okay, there's like 14 books, and okay, I guess these 2 are the ones that are going to get cut. This is all either so the first like 3 things are Strange Adventures, which is obviously something we really care about. The end of Metal, a giant one-shot resetting the DC universe, which is fascinating, and then all the Future State stuff is all stuff that we want to try. So there's no like weak link of going, hey, that's the thing that we could obviously cut.
Yeah, there's nothing there where I'm going, well, I'll just skip that week. It's like, well, I can't miss Metal, obviously. Can't miss the 80-page Generations. Strange Adventures is a given. Although that feels so weirdly out of place with everything else that week.
That'll be the palate cleanser at the end of the episode.
Yeah, I think it'll have to be. And then we'll have like one of the Batman oversized things, one of the Superman oversized things, whatever it was. It's like, yeah, that's going to be an intense week of reading.
I'll do a proper schedule there, but that's where we stand right now. So, as per usual, Solicits took almost an hour.
To be fair, I think as soon as these started coming out this week, I knew this was going to be a long section.
Mm-hmm.
I knew, because this was not easy. This was complicated, like in terms of, okay, these are these books and they're coming out this way, and some are oversized, some are minis, some are one shots. Yeah, it's a lot. Because I don't think, I say some are one shots. I don't think we talked about any one shots.
No, I think they're all 2 issues or 4 issues, and then there's that one weird one that's 3 issues.
There is definitely at least one shot somewhere, because in the DC announcement, so the Batman family is broken down into oversized and then monthly miniseries. the Superman family was broken down into oversized and then monthly miniseries and one shots. So at least one of those is a one shot. And I'm seeing the Future State Superman versus Imperious Lex, which was the 3-issue one.
Mm-hmm.
Does not seem to be double shipping because it says in brackets the end of this 3-issue series ending in March. The one shot is a Future State House of L, which will be in February. So there's a one shot to come in February.
So there's one random one is lingering into March.
There's always one.
And which wouldn't even be that weird to me. See, if it was like one of the main ones, like one of the big ones, I'd be like, okay, that's going to be at the start of March to like sort of realign things or set things up or something. But that one feels so random because it's fairly low down the list.
It's just the Mark Russell one, which don't get me wrong, I'm looking forward to it. It's Mark Russell and Steve Pugh. I like Steve Pugh.
Weird.
But it doesn't feel like the essential book.
Weird, but oh well. 2021 is starting off with things happening.
A bang. It is determined to make your wallet hurt at the start of the year. Like, usually people spend less in January because they spend a lot for Christmas. This is determined to make you reconsider that next year.
Well, on the upside, you may not have to spend as much in Christmas this year, with the exception of people you live with. You don't necessarily have to.
I still have to send them gifts. I have to see them, but I still have to send them.
No, I mean, just, pandemic. Less money. Sorry, family. Bye-bye.
Well, it's all right for you. You're a single child. I got brothers and stuff that I've got to acknowledge.
just fake your death. It's fine.
Tempting.
Yes. I'm more than willing to help.
Well, I bet you are. I would not trust you to stick to the fake part.
So this is a trick blade, right? Yeah.
Yeah, pretty sure.
This is trick machete. Don't worry. It's designed to retract. Don't worry.
Yeah.
So there you go. That is Solicits. Future State is coming. Lots going on. I will say I'm fascinated by this. Some of the stuff reminds me, actually, even though I never actually got around to reading this, and I will at some point someday, it reminds me a little bit when things changed in Superman after New Krypton, where you had Mon-El as like the acting Superman, and you had Nightwing and Flamebird in the Greg Rucka Action Comics, and you had Superwoman was in Supergirl. At least the super part reminds me of that. And then Batman, kind of similar, just on its own corner, doing its own variations.
I think what's interesting is I would not be surprised to see them return to this universe. Not maybe like in the same way, like, pause everything and go to this, but the books that find an audience that resonate with people, some of it might get integrated just into the core line, but others we might kind of go, here's a mini series set in this world, or a one shot, whatever they decide to do. Maybe even straight to trade, like Image and others are experimenting with that lately. The OGNs. Maybe they'll want to kind of try that a bit more. Kind of almost replace the Earth One line, which is kind of going nowhere. Kind of maybe try this instead.
Maybe. I could see it just being like there'll be crossover events where there's some time travel involved, or let's be honest, this will likely just end up becoming another Earth so that they can cross over directly with it without it being the future of what our characters are. Even though that's what they are right now, it's a possible future. In a couple of years' time, if we see them again, it's probably just going to be an alternate Earth, just to make life easy.
Probably.
That's what happens.
Okay. That's the beauty of the multiverse. I mean, they might even actively shunt them into a separate Earth at the end of this series, at the end of this event. That might be how they kind of wrap it up.
Well, let's talk about comics. We got a decent amount of those to get through. So, Dark Knight's Death Metal issue 4, Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo on the book, of course. And we have
a return to the main book.
Return to the main book, although, and of course the art's being back, it really doesn't really feel like we've been away, to be honest.
The biggest difference that I can really talk about, Barry, let's say the artist, is the first handful of pages are a recap, including the one-shots that we just read.
Yeah, I have to say, I think the Flash and the Green Lanterns ones, I think they're still essential reading, don't get me wrong. But I think the one where I felt it the most, that it feels like if you hadn't read it, it would be so jarring, is the Trinity one, where they go off to the crisis.
No, I agree. And I think I said this if not at the end of the last one, I definitely said it by the end of Trinity Crisis that it felt particularly important. Because this, you have that 2-3 page recap. The third page has a little bit of recap in it, the title with the map. And then the next page it's all white and it says Crisis on Infinite Earths. And it's like, yeah, you needed to have read that issue. Otherwise...
Yeah, it would be such a jarring jump if you didn't. I kind of expect, at the very least, that to be in the main trade, if not all three of those, and then everything else will be in the companion before they do the eventual omnibus with everything all.
Yeah, if they don't put at least Trinity Crisis in the main trade, I think that's unacceptable, frankly.
Yeah. Even though I'm probably going to transition to just having DC Universe Infinite for the rest of my life and never buying another trade ever again in my life, but that's
it's neither here nor there.
Yes,
there are some people who want to own their trades.
Yes, the physical trades, obviously it would still be an issue. You're at the mercy of whatever they decide to do. So yeah, Batman's in the Crisis on Infinite Earths world dealing with whatever the Anti-Monitor's morphed into. So some little robot-looking kid. And you have Superman in the Final Crisis with our real Darkseid, who seems to have transported to this Crisis Earth.
But aged at this Earth.
Yes, but yes, he's relative to this Earth in the sense that he's been here for ruling for hundreds of years. In this context, and I actually just noticed here that he's got Hal Jordan making his Stormform. I didn't even notice that the first time I looked through this.
Yeah, and he's holding up what seems to be Cassandra Cain Batgirl on one hand and Supergirl on the other.
Oh, underneath his hand. I thought you meant because he's holding something in his fingertips. She's sort of dangling from his wrist.
In fact, it's almost like she's the armrest. Is what they're being.
Yeah,
they're being his armrests.
That's what we're doing. I question why Cassandra Cain's got the strength to do that. I mean, I get why Supergirl's strong enough to hold up his arm.
No, I think it's notable. Supergirl's just doing it with one hand.
True, true.
She's obviously strong enough to just hold it. He's not putting a lot of weight down. He's not attacking or anything like that. He's just sitting. So she's strong enough to hold it with some strain, clearly. But yeah, I buy that. And then you've got Bobo and Blue Devil just off the sides.
Yeah, and Darcy's going to throw Superman into this fiery pit. He's got, Red Sun Superman, I should say, and some other variants there.
Yeah, I thought one of them. I wasn't sure. The one on the left, the symbol looked like Kingdom Come symbol, but obviously he's a lot younger than that. Superman seems.
Yeah, I think they're playing upon that imagery. I don't think it's meant to. I mean, unless someone's going to say this is specifically this story.
See, if it hadn't been like Kingdom Come, Red Sun, where I explicitly recognise that, I would have assumed they were all kind of just playing on things, but I'm assuming they are all Supermen from stories that I'm not familiar with.
Meanwhile, though, Wonder Woman has the most interesting, and probably the story that this issue really is she's at Infinite Crisis with Superboy Prime. Forgive me.
Giving him a bit of credit there.
I know. Well, Joe, what I love about this story is that essentially it's Wonder Woman, because Superboy Prime has been given this world, this Crisis version where he won. And he's built a world that's based on the superheroes of old. And, Superboy Prime was always this meta thing about, this kid from our world who was a fanboy who wanted things to be the way he wanted them to be. And there's actually something kind of heartwarming about the plot of this issue being Wonder Woman convincing him that the whole idea of Superman is to hope. The exact line later on is that that's what Superman is, a shot in the dark. So the issue is essentially her convincing him to help, and the idea that this thing that you've given into, this Batman who laughs and these worlds that are being created, this is not what you stand for. This is not what you believe in. There's a reason why you cared about any of us in the first place. There's a reason why you idolize Superman, and it's kind of this dipping into that meta thing a little bit, and him sort of being like, no, you know what, you keep messing it up and everything keeps changing, so I'm going to have my continuity the way I want it, the way things are. The whole time. Everything's Silver Age, okay? Everything's Silver Age and no one's changing it.
I appreciate how true to form this Prime is. I have a question for you.
Yes.
Obviously, we're pretty versed in DC history at this point. All of this is fun for us, right? Seeing the way it's playing with these things. If you've not read some of these crises, especially, I think especially Infinite Crisis here, which is the most important one for this issue, does this issue work for you, do you think? Or does it just kind of fall completely flat?
I think it probably works in the same way that when I read Final Crisis 10 years ago, a lot of it didn't work for me. And I think that's part of not the main line. I think the regular characters in DC typically work almost any time you want to jump in at the start of a run or start of a big story. And DC has a lot of good standalone stories. I think when it comes to the main like events, the Crisis, whether it's Infinite Earths, Crisis on Infinite Earths, whatever. I think that side of DC, that mythology of what a crisis is, I think that's the wall that's hard to penetrate, because I was reading for years before I really started to understand what the hell all that shit was.
No, I get it. But I think this in particular feels probably a bit more egregious to me than Final Crisis does, because this particular story has been going for what, 3-4 years? You can trace back to, all right, Snyder did Metal, which was pretty accessible, and then through to No Justice and his Justice League run, and then the first 2 or 3 issues of this particular event as well. That's supposed to be the capper to his stuff at DC.
I think it's,
and then all of a sudden it feels like a big wall's been put up.
I wouldn't say a wall. I think this is part of what reading comics is, and it's definitely part of what DC is. And I think the way this works, it's not so much, think of it less of a wall. I do think, yes, there'll be people who have not been reading for that long, and they've maybe read Metal, and they've read his Justice League building up to this, so it's been one saga of that. And they get to this, and it starts to tie in, it starts to reference these big things from DC's past that maybe they don't know. I think that happens in almost every comic. And, these days, all this requires is like, okay, let me go read a wiki article on Crisis on Infinite Earths. Let me go read a wiki article on Infinite Crisis and see what that says. What are people talking about? And I think that's how you become invested. I don't think I would have become invested and wanted to read those stories had they not been brought up in various other things. And it is a little bit of maybe an obstacle to get over as a new reader, but I think if you've been reading this saga that Snyder's been doing since the start of Metal through now, I don't think this is enough to make you go, oh god, I don't get any of this at all now. Like, it's just a hurdle in this one issue, because this one issue focuses heavily on the idea of what Superboy Prime is and what he did and what his goal was at the time.
Yeah, I think, and again, yes, you can just read a wiki, and that's great. You can do that. I think it's this isn't like people who have come into comics with the start of Metal, like, even more specifically the start of Death Metal. Like, they haven't jumped on at issue 1 of this event, and kind of this is where they've started, and and I'm sure some people did, but they are naturally going to have hurdles. But just even going back to the original Metal onwards, you get to this issue, and it's all about, okay, it's all these crises, but versions of them where we didn't succeed. You have to be inherently familiar with the versions where they did succeed for it to understand any of those differences. It feels like out of nowhere, quite a large obstacle to throw up at once.
I think it works well enough without understanding that, though, in terms of what the core beat is. And I guess what I would say is, if you've been reading, if let's say you started reading around Metal, and that was where you started reading DC Comics, inevitably there's going to be a point at somewhere where the subject of the past crisis are going to come up. And it happening this late relatively into this overall grand story that has been going on for 3 years now. At the very least, you're so invested, if you've been reading since the start of the first Metal to this point, that I don't think it's going to throw you off in terms of your enthusiasm for it. And ultimately, I think the assumption is that if you've been reading DC Comics heavily for the last 3 years, there's a good chance you've already maybe started to dabble in at least one of the crises by now. And if you haven't, this is your signpost saying, hey, this is kind of a big part of your DC knowledge that you need. And this is us telling you, yeah, every so often this is going to come up. So either you can just accept that you won't get some of these things, or go and do your history.
I did phrase this as a question, as do you think it works or not? Because I don't know. It's hard for me to disassociate, I guess, to that level, because the only experience we have is knowing what we do.
I can only go by my own experience in getting into comics and how obtuse and confusing some of the elements were to begin with. But typically, you start focusing on one character, you expand out, and they start referencing things like Crisis and whatnot, and eventually you're so into the world of DC that you say, you know what, I want to understand the larger scope. I want to know what these things are. And I don't think there's... And if you are a fan, and ultimately I think comic books being so serialized, even though they do try to make it as new reader friendly as possible and have people come into new books and whatnot, ultimately at its core, they're serialized stories that want to reward people for sticking around for long periods of time, and hardcore fans.
This is, I mean, not to spoil my thoughts on the book, but this is very rewarding for people like us, right?
Yeah, this is... If you're someone who's been reading since then, don't get me wrong, some old fans obviously get very jaded with changes. New 52 was a trying time for many of us, as we often talk about. And this is funny because even though like we didn't completely reset everything after the New 52 and fix everything, it's worth mentioning that between Metal and Doomsday Clock, the history of the DCU, from every crisis and prior to every crisis, has all felt more important and part of the larger tapestry through these stories and tackling these things and talking about the first crisis and Infinite Crisis and all these things.
It is worth noting, it's less of a, we didn't reset after New 52 into Rebirth. We've changed things here or there. We've kind of dabbled and, fixed bits, section by section, a little bit patchworky. But I think it has been more of a focus of the past all happened rather than actually just a hard reset. In the way that we often get after a crisis.
And given that we're going to do it again at some point, it's inevitable. It's not happening now with Future State. They're promising it's not a reboot, but there will be some kind of crisis at some point that, even if it's not a complete reboot in the sense that, like, number ones and all that, there's going to be some sort of crisis at some point which does reset parts of continuity. It's going to inevitably happen.
I do feel that as much as they say it's not a reboot, all I hear is don't call it a reboot. And while numbering will continue and some runs will continue, I would not be surprised if there are some reasonably sizable continuity shifts between Metal and Future State.
It's possible. I do remember when the first ever Rebirth teaser came out, I do remember one of the posters saying it's not a reboot and it never was, or something to that effect.
And that is technically true.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of... I mean, if you think about what Doomsday Clock ended up getting to with the metaverse, in a weird way, it almost feels like Johns was teasing that with... if he had any say in what went on that teaser poster that said it's not a reboot and it never was, it could actually tie in because he knew what he was eventually going to say with Doomsday Clock. Because he was clearly already, because he'd already written Rebirth issue 1 at the very least at that point, so he knew that he was doing Watchmen stuff.
Which is why he may have had some say on that teaser poster, because he was pretty involved back at the start of Rebirth.
And if nothing else, it's something that, at least so far, via Death Metal and these other things that we're doing now, has stuck from Doomsday Clock, is the idea that, no, every time we reset, the things that happened before the crisis still count in some fashion, and the characters do start to remember things. Now, admittedly, we're getting to a point now where so many characters are remembering multiple lives, it's kind of weird. Like, Iris remembers multiple versions of her life. Lois remembers multiple versions of life.
From what we understand, was the driving motivation behind 5G, was to tidy up the timeline. So if Future State obviously doesn't reboot and fix things in the same way that 5G was just going to change things, it wouldn't surprise me if it has the same goal in terms of tidying the timeline for our characters.
Very possible, very possible. So the flashes are running, just to get back to the book. From
it was a bit of a tangent.
From whatever. Robin King's dragging the whatever's left of Jonah Hex.
Just kind of the head, mostly.
I did like a little touch here, actually. Robin King's trying to wind up Harley by pointing out that, like, superheroes, their darkest fears are always evil versions of themselves. Supervillains, their darkest fears are always, heroic versions of themselves. And if you never ask yourself why there's never a Harley Quinn who laughs, it's because you are a villain, and there is no bad version of you because you are the bad version, is essentially what he's saying, to rile her up. And obviously, I don't necessarily believe that is to be true, but it is an effective thing that he's saying to get her under her skin.
I like it as well, and it makes the point of he acknowledges they choose which heroes / villains they bring to this earth. They don't recruit the ones that they are useful, and maybe they didn't recruit more evil Harleys because they wanted to get under Harley's skin like this. So that's maybe something they did.
Oh, it's very possible. Then he whips out his hammer, which apparently the Harley on his air tried to kill him with. So he's
it's obviously he calls it a mallet, which I think is the definition. Is mallet just a wooden hammer? But it was a little bit underwhelming compared to the mallets that we typically associate Harley with the big, oversized, comical ones.
Well, I think that's the point. Is maybe be more visceral. Like, it's more just like an actual hammer, which feels more violent than a big mallet. Because even if the big mallet would probably still hurt if you get hit with it.
It's more cartoony. Yeah, isn't it? It's kind of Roadrunner.
It's comical. Whereas if I walked into a room holding like a regular hammer, saying I'm going to hit you with this, it would immediately just be more intimidating because it looks fucking painful. And I just swore.
Well, it'd be intimidating coming from you, but.
Do I have to hit you over the head with a hammer to make you...
All I'm saying is you threaten me too often. I'm numb to it now. The thread's worn off.
All right. Well, an F-bomb slipped through, and I'm not going to find it to edit it out, so we're just going to have to accept that it's there.
You get one, right? That's the rules.
That's PG-13, I suppose. So Superboy Prime's got Wonder Woman strapped into the tuning fork, the big cosmic tuning fork, as we do. Darkseid says Superman is, and then crushes the Alfred box.
Yeah, and the Anti-Monitor is kind of
just separating Batman,
undoing Batman.
Yeah,
is the word I want to use.
Split it apart. So basically, Wonder Woman and convincing Superboy Prime to help, which we kind of mentioned earlier, the believing what Superman is and convincing him to do the right thing. Which I like the idea of that Superboy Prime in some form can actually be convinced. Still, he's not a complete lost cause.
Yeah, I like that Superboy Prime isn't inherently just a villain. He's a, I mean, the whole point of him was always the warped fanboy, right? Who just wants his thing. The idea that maybe you can still appeal to those people as you can recognize your thing in this version.
Well, I think that the hope in a broader sense is that the warped asshole 14-year-old fanboy can still grow up and be a man someday and still be a better person eventually, right? One day he might grow up, right? If that's what he represents. So
yeah, and I like it here where she can show this version of Superman and be like, no, maybe it's not exactly the Superman that you know, that you love, that you remember, but you can recognize the key ideals, the point, and that's enough. That they can keep you going through those reboots.
Yeah. So, which again feels very meta. It's like it's appealing to us.
Anytime you bring Superboy Prime into it, it inherently gets meta.
But basically, she says, you altered reality once just by punching it. Like, why don't you do that again? Why don't you fix this and get us all the power we need so we can, save the multiverse?
This is where I really felt bad for anyone who wasn't familiar with this original story.
It does that thing. It does that thing where he's got her pinned down by the neck. His fist comes up, and it's obviously. And I was sort of smirking as it was happening because I knew it was going to do that thing where instead of punching her, he's going to punch behind her and essentially punch reality so hard.
And we don't see the punch land. You just see the shattered images of the other crises.
It's the cliffhanger, yeah. So it's a big moment that it probably doesn't make a ton of sense if you're not familiar with the whole punching reality past of Superboy Prime. But Superman and Batman are there with Superboy Prime and Wonder Woman, and they're coming back. They've got the cube. They beam it into Wally, but something's not quite worked. It's not happening.
And the Flashes look exhausted because obviously they've been running.
Yeah.
Wally looks like almost dead, sat on that chair.
He's in red again in the end here. Not with no.
He is, yeah. It's notable.
And then it's like, no, the Batman Who Laughs, the Darkest Night, rigged it so that the power from the chair would just conduit to him. And, it's kind of a cheap twist, but at the same time, if we're going into the idea that Batman always plans, the idea that the evil Batman would also always plan, and kind
of makes sense.
Yeah. So it ends with him saying, no, I am going to usurp Perpetua. I'm going to make my own multiverse. Welcome to the last 52, to be continued.
Kind of low. Again, we knew the last 52 was a thing because it's a one shot. I think it's coming up by that name. But the idea that this is his last 52 Earths in existence, and this warped perception of the new 52 again, to do it from the villain, it's kind of great.
I feel like we left behind the feeling of the new 52 a long time ago. I think Rebirth, well, it didn't change everything. It successfully got me out of what the feeling of the new 52 was. So I didn't really need this. But it does kind of feel like a last middle finger to the 52. Like, okay, we're doing the last 52 to say goodbye to that shit. Go away.
It does. It feels like, we spoke a lot in this review how Rebirth wasn't a direct reboot. It didn't automatically change the continuity of the new 52. We were technically still in that universe, but it's felt like a different era of comics, which is what matters more than the continuity ultimately. And but this here does feel like, no, this is one final kind of, I won't say goodbye. That's been a bit generous, but FU might be closer.
Yeah. So, no, it's a good issue. I mean, I think the last 5 or 6 pages are some of the best stuff this series has done. It maybe falters a little bit just in the sense that it's just bouncing between all the characters and there's not really a lot of advancement. It's just kind of the building up to the big moment where Wonder Woman's able to talk Prime into this and then the outcome of it. But that outcome and that sort of exhilaration from that last chunk of the issue is fantastic. And it feels really rewarding as a long-term DC fan. And I was not apathetic at this event. I wasn't that like
cautious. I think would be a fair word to what you were.
Maybe more just that I expected that I would still enjoy it, much like the first Metal, but I wasn't expecting to love it. And I think that this, for me, has outshone that first Metal so far.
I'm a bigger fan of the original Metal than you were by quite a margin, and I would agree with that. That it's far outshone it in that. The original Metal was a lot of fun. I loved what it was for what it was, but this is inherently bigger.
Yeah, I feel like this is. The first Metal was about Snyder just doing this crazy story and playing with his toys, and then as Connor's drunk in this gets his.
No, that was just I moved one coaster out of the way because it was an empty glass, and I didn't quite move it far enough. So when I put down the other glass, I clinked them.
Whenever I hear clinking coming from you, I'm just assuming lots and lots of whiskey bottles just toppling over each other.
No, all the whiskey bottles are down this side. This was just. It was the glass that I've just finished that had the old fashioned, and then this just glass of regular store brand Coke.
With whiskey?
No, there's no booze in this.
I don't believe you. So, but yeah, no. What I would say is that the first Metal felt like it was Snyder playing with all his toys and doing his weird thing. This story, it feels like an actual crisis. And even though the first one did have some crisis elements, and we said maybe it should have been called Dark Crisis, which it was kind of rumored to be at one point. But this one actually does feel like it's a big DC crisis level event. I mean, as they're calling it, the Anti-Crisis, which I think is a cool title. If anything, I almost feel like they could have just called. I mean, maybe not this one because Death Metal is a cool name, but I almost feel like there could have been an event at some point called the Anti-Crisis, and it would have been.
It probably could have been, and yeah, I agree with everything you just said there. Like that first Metal was Snyder having fun, and again we refer to it as a crisis, and it was doing those sort of level of events, but it was doing it almost tongue in cheek. It was kind of just having fun with it, whereas this feels like a more serious, legitimate attempt at a crisis.
Plus, he's also bringing in things, a little bit of Doomsday Clock here, a little bit of these other things there. He's actually having to set up stuff for the rest of the universe. It's not going to be him doing it afterwards. Because that was the thing at the end of Metal. I was like, okay, I'm setting up No Justice and then into Justice League, which is all me. I'm doing all this. I'm just setting up my own things.
And credit to him, it's been a pretty cohesive story.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you haven't loved all of it, but it has flowed from element to element.
It could definitely have been much worse. I mean, as much as I'm not always completely in love with his Justice League, there was definitely high points throughout, and I was never completely miserable with it. It's not, So, no, Death Metal issue 4 is a solid middle chapter, and has me hyped for the last 3, and however they're going to somehow, get out of this.
And all the remaining one shots still left to come. I feel like there's still probably quite a few.
There is. I'm pretty sure November and December are still quite. In fact, there's even going to be more this month, I assume. We might remember.
Well, there's at least one this month.
Yeah. Anyways, let's rate the book. What are you giving Death Metal for?
It's an 8.5 from me.
I want to give it a 9.
Oh, bold.
I think I'm going to give it a 9. Yeah, Death Metal 4. Not a perfect issue, but goddamn, the highs are high. So, and obviously the art's very good. It's Capullo. This is the weird thing. It's when the same artist every time, you eventually get to a point where there's nothing left to say.
He's not doing any new tricks. He's not doing anything.
I think the scene pacing to the punch and then like flipping the page and just seeing the reality shatter is really good scene building in terms of
It is, but like the thing is, this is what I expect from Capullo all the time anyway. So he's not surprising me. He's not above and beyond, but Capullo's standard anyway is so high in his storytelling that him just being standard is still really great and above average from what I expect from most artists, frankly.
Wonder Woman 764, Mariko Tamaki writing with Steve Pugh on the art, or Steve Pugh, as I have typoed on my list.
How unacceptable of you.
The B and the V right next to each other, that's a common typo, right? It's a common...
Just don't disservice these wonderful artists like that.
Look,
keep it to yourself.
Steve, I'm sure, would find humour in the situation. Complete accent. So... we have a new status quo in Wonder Woman where Max Lord is working with her, and we get this odd little one-off story here about them going to investigate someone, and it goes for this kind of like pulpy 80s vibe. The story's called The Amazing Adventures of Darren Hondor, which apparently is a TV detective that Maxwell Lord looks a lot alike because everyone keeps thinking he's this guy. I get the impression though there might be something to this, where maybe something his daughter's done to make everyone think.
It feels like it's setting something up. Yeah. And to continue the 80s vibe there, the title is that the Amazing Adventures of Darren Hondo or Miami or Bust.
Yeah, so they're going for this cheesy 80s vibe. They're in Miami. He's got the shades on and all that.
It feels notable that this is coming out around the time when Wonder Woman 84 should have been coming out.
That's a good point, actually. Yes,
with Max Lord as well.
It was supposed to be out this month. Yes, and it's been pushed to December. It'll probably get pushed again, given.
Yeah, Patty Jenkins seemed pretty insistent that it wasn't going to, but I don't buy that for a second.
Yeah, I don't know what they're going to do, because even didn't get pushed a whole goddamn year, basically. So,
which knocked on Batman as well, right?
Yeah. Well, with Batman, I assume, though, because they keep having to take pauses in production, so I assume that maybe was just going to get pushed back anyway because of
probably
scheduling.
But they threw Dune on its date, so
yeah. But I wonder if the reason why they picked Batman's date is because Batman was going to get pushed, so they thought, okay, we'll put that in Batman's date now that that's opened up, and then we'll put Batman on this date.
Very possible.
And so on and so on.
There's just no movies. Release Green Knight, you cowards.
Connor's mad at A24, apparently. So,
really am.
Yeah, they're looking for this guy. They've got a contact to meet in the beach, and there's a fun scene in the restaurant as well beforehand. But they're there to meet this guy on the beach who's got a blue and white towel, and this is an issue of basically Maxwell Lord just getting annoyed at humans. Essentially, he's just annoyed over and over again, and he's pissed off that they're looking for someone with a blue and white towel, but the towel that the hotel they just came out of sell are all blue and white. So everyone has a blue and white towel. So he's livid. And then they find this guy, and the guy immediately is like, you know what? I'm not going to waste time pretending anything. I'm just here to kill you. Freelance superhero killing. It's the new game. So
and brings up some robots out to sea.
Well, I think importantly, they're like aqua robots. They've got I don't know if it's meant to be. It's like they've got glass suits that are kind of it's like they're deep sea suits for these robots that are kind of, dare I say, Creature from the Black Lagoon-esque in their shape and demeanor.
It almost looks like when Mira or Jackson controls the water.
Oh, almost.
It almost looks like a hard water shell around the exoskeleton.
Yeah, I think it's glass though, just from looking at it. Like if you look at that two-page spread.
I hope it's tempered glass at the very least. Otherwise, this is a nice, easy job for Wonder Woman.
I assume. I'll say glass. Maybe it's more of a plastic than a glass.
It'd be very economically unfriendly, but sure.
He's a supervillain.
Well, the supervillain's been a bit generous to this guy, I think.
Okay, he's a wannabe villain. Okay.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah.
But he's built a robot, and then there's also the woman robot who's got the metallic arm and the leg, and part of her face, which definitely does not look like water. I will say.
No, it doesn't.
But yeah, so there's a bit of fight scenes, some gorgeous layouts here. I mean, the artist here obviously is a different artist again. This is Pugh, who I think does a pretty good job. I think the overall issue has a fun vibe to it. I think the action once it starts, that 2-page spread that I mentioned before where they're coming out of the water, it does feel big. I love the clean colors, all that stuff. It's not a complete, it's not Yannin from the first couple of issues, don't get me wrong.
It's not. I think my biggest problem with Pugh is there's the odd face that looks a bit funny, especially on Diana, I think.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's one of these weird things, though. I think the overall aesthetic, though, is so strong that I don't mind it as much than other books, because the action and everything feels so clean and fun, and it feels big and bold. It feels like a summer adventure that even results with Wonder Woman calling in a big shark to help out with the
one of the megalodons that protects Themyscira, I believe. Which I don't remember the last time that was referenced.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I was kind of half expecting Aquaman to pop out at the end to say that's the friend she called was Aquaman,
and then it's a big shot. Yeah, because I think those megalodons are from Gail Simone's Wonder Woman run. Actually, yes. I don't remember the last time they were referenced. Maybe it happened in some of the Orlando stuff that we weren't reading. Admittedly.
Yeah, it's been a long time since it has been brought up. Because once we saw the shark, I was expecting Aquaman to pop out from behind the fin. It's like he's controlling the shark, and she called in Aquaman to help. But no, it's it's the Meg. It's the Meg. Jason Statham's not far behind.
It's one of.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
I do, but I just want to make it clear they have a whole swarm of these protecting the island, not just one.
Yes. This is very impressive. Very impressive. Notably, Maxwell Lord keeps the phone that the villain had later on.
He made him hand it over to just little bits like that.
And he is calling someone about his daughter. He's like saying, what are you doing? Are you keeping care of her, kind of thing. Like, what are you doing? And whoever's on the other end is like doing whatever Max wants to. Upper dosage. Like he's killing. I get the idea here that like we're not really sure if it's something nefarious but we're definitely thinking it could be because he's Maxwell Lord.
It sounds like it, and the way this is presented, he's like, the guy on the other end of the phone's like, "What do you want me to do?" Mm-hmm. He's like, keep her there and keep her controlled. Do what you're paid to do. And then we see it looks, like it's just a hospital almost. Is where we see, this doctor that he's on the phone to, which presents the idea that maybe this isn't sinister. Maybe it's like, no, you got to keep a control. Like it could be. You could read this as a genuine request, but because it's Max Lord, we assume it's not.
Yeah,
then he does follow this up by making a guy call himself Scum.
Yes, well, he's been bothered by people. That's just something we've established. And it just kind of ends with Wonder Woman kind of like looking out at the sunset and wondering, like, she can't trust Max Lord, but she's kind of stuck in this place where she has to work with him. So it's kind of like I had a lot of fun with this issue. I think it's not like a super important one, I don't think, on its own. Other than maybe just really establishing the working relationship between them to sort of set up what they're doing. But I had a fun time. It had that Tamaki pacing and the dialogue. It flowed very well.
There's a line of dialogue in there where Max Lord calls out her outfit because she's wearing like a kind of traditional ancient Greek style dress thing.
Yes.
And it's like you're supposed to be undercover, incognito. And she's like, it's Miami. He's like, this is not what they wear in Miami. And she goes, Miami's a state of mind. And I kind of felt that permeating through the issue, kind of that what the intention of that was, kind of the fun, pulpy kind of sheen. Felt like that's what the tone of the issue was the entire time, which I really liked. Yeah,
I enjoyed the montage of the beach of Max Lord just sort of like getting angry at various people. It's like a 4-panel page where he's just yelling. It's like, come on, as he's witnessing people around the beach.
There's a lot of little things like that. There's like Diana's hair. She's got it all up in like some fancy do whatever. But then after the fight, obviously it's all the water. It all comes loose, and there's just a panel of her kind of wringing it out and tying it back a little bit. And it's different to how it was for the rest of the issue. Just little things like that, like almost like this continuity that never really gets considered in a lot of superhero comics.
I like the coloring. I mean, I mentioned how clean it was, and I like that about the art in general. But in particular, in the last page, I like that they're going with these like these more purple hues. It definitely gives it more of a Miami feel because it looks like you're like Miami Vice like sort of cover or something like that. That's what they're going for.
It's really nice. It's like the sun's just starting to set and it's like the glow on the ocean, but it is that very purple orange sort of thing that it's got going that does feel ultra Miami.
Yeah. So, what are you giving Wonder Woman?
I am going to give it a straight 8.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Straight 8 for Wonder Woman for me.
I think for me, this was actually my favorite issue since the first one.
It may be for me as well, but I like the last ones more than you did. But this is the sort of stuff I love. I love that they've set up the status quo. This weird, awkward working relationship is a really fun, thing to have for a while for this run.
Yeah, I'm down for it.
It might give their relationship a new dynamic that we've never had before. So a lot of potential there. So Superman issue 26, Bryan Michael Bendis with Ivan Reis on the art. You read the last issue. Were you not excited enough to come back and find out?
The last issue of this, which I should point out, you and Matt also universally agreed was one of the worst issues of the book.
I don't know if we went that far, but sure, we had critiques, yes.
Some pretty major problems.
Yes. Oh yeah, I think I had another point to make. That's why I was. Oh, you've muted yourself. That's what's happened.
I'm back.
Yeah, you're back now.
that was a hardware glitch. No, some pretty major problems in the last issue that you two were also not a fan of. So why would I come back for this?
I'm more curious. I don't know. There's a hint at the start of the book with Superman fighting the villain that was introduced last issue. Chaos happening, but we then jump back, and it's for all the critiques of the last issue, which almost entirely. I mean, you had some other critiques, but me and Matt all of our critiques were entirely on how they chose to introduce the villain, and it was all that stuff that was sort of, heavily featured throughout the whole issue. Here, and the stuff that I love what Bendis does with Superman is all the character beats, it's all the little moments. Superman talking to Lois about going to see Dr. Fate for therapy and talking about how stressed he is, and they have this really romantic little moment about how she kind of like stabilizes him, and she's always done that for him ever since he met her, and they have this romantic little beat. And he hears Kal-X like sends a hologram into the room. He's like, "Hey, there's something, Fortress, you must come." And Lois is cracking witty banter throughout. But basically, something's coming towards the Earth, and it's the villain, right? He's just making a beeline for it, but he's got 14 hours before it gets there. So he goes to wake up Jimmy, who's been staying in the fortress for the last little bit. That's been previously established, and it says, "Okay, let's go back to the planet." And this deals with more of the stuff. Some of my favorite stuff that Bendis has done is the whole revealing who he is and just how characters interact and how they respond to it. And we have Jimmy here still calling him Superman. He's like, "Hey, you can call me Clark, And he's like, "Yeah, I don't know, it doesn't feel right." And he's like, "What about Cal?" And he's like, "That's even weirder," kind of thing. But when he goes back to the planet, and I think it's Lombard who comes up and is basically saying, "Are we safe, like, with you here? Like, go on, like, how?" And one of the arguments that kept coming up before was that everyone kind of knew people who Superman cared about were at the planet anyway, so it doesn't really make that much of a difference. But Superman, he reveals that there's actually some tech that's been installed in the building, much like the Hall of Justice and a couple of other key locations. He says that it's been designed to withstand certain things because it's a prime target. And the only place that's safer on Earth is maybe the Batcave. To which, I think, is it Trish or someone? No, it's Lombard who says, "Okay, what's a Batcave?" And doesn't know what a Batcave is. Which I have to agree. Sometimes I actually dislike how like average citizens seem to know what a Batcave is in the context of Batman, because why would they know that he's got a cave full of stuff? I get why the other heroes know about it. They've been there or they've heard about it.
I think it's relatively self-explanatory as well, though, in context of the situation here. Like, they might be like, "Wait, he hasn't?" Like, that's the name of it, but it kind of functionally explains itself.
Well, yeah, but this works because they're not even talking about Batman. He just mentions Batcave kind of like offhand.
No, fair enough then.
Because he's just talking about safe locations, and he's like, "What's a Batcave?" Outside of just being a cave for bats, which is the obvious answer to that question. But so it's got all these little things with them kind of like questioning and being worried, and it brings up the Lana interview. Trish is mad that he gave an interview to her instead of herself. But then, of course, this being is arriving on Earth. It's coming straight for the planet, making the previous conversation about it being safe kind of funny. But he, rips open the shirt, flies off to deal with it, and everyone's like, "I'm still not used to that." And there's some gorgeous like layouts here of Superman flying into space and like sort of taking this thing head on. And he tries to communicate. He tries to communicate verbally. He says in his mind, like, "I'm opening my mind up telepathically, so you can, if you're a telepath, there's no blocks, you can communicate with me." He tries multiple languages. There's a gorgeous page of them falling through the clouds in the sky, and they're basically going straight for the Daily Planet building, right? And it's kind of this thing where all of the concern in the previous sequences was all about them thinking, "Are we safe being here with everyone knowing that you're Superman and you're in the building?" And they're falling straight for the globe. And then we turn the page, and everyone in the building's all ducked for cover, and they're like, "Wait, nothing's happened. We're okay. What's going on?" And then we cut to the Phantom Zone. So something that was put into the Daily Planet recently is that kind of like a seatbelt, I guess, or maybe not a seatbelt, like the airbag in a car, where if there's something that's going to hit the planet that's the impact's enough to destroy it or cause like damage that would be too much and kill everyone inside, basically there's like an automatic like portal to the Phantom Zone that's going to open to save it. So Superman and the villain from last issue, whose name I cannot remember and it's not mentioned here, so just alien dude from last issue, are in the Phantom Zone. And again, he tries to communicate. He talks to it in multiple Earth language. He tries Kryptonian. He tries everything he can. But the Cliffhanger is just this thing. He's really strong, fires a blast of energy at him and has him pinned down. To be continued. I enjoyed this issue a lot. I think the action's really fun just because the art's so good. It doesn't bog down in who this villain is, which is why the last issue was such a slog to get through. But my favorite stuff, as always, is the quiet moments with Lois. It's the quiet moments with Jimmy and the others in the planet. Them reacting to who he is. We're still dealing with the fallout of like them knowing who he is. The fact that he even walks out of Daily Planet without glasses on. He's just, he walks in and in a shirt and tie, but he's not got glasses on. And I think one of them says, "Wait, why are you wearing a suit?" And he's like, "Because I'm at the office. It's my day job. I'm not wearing a Superman suit here. That's not inappropriate. What are you talking about?" So all that stuff I really enjoy, and I think this was a nice bounce back after the last issue, which I do think I loved the Lana stuff last issue, but everything with the alien introduction, just it was like something that could have been done in like 2 or 3 pages that droned on with tons and tons of like bubbles and text for a whole subplot that didn't need to be a whole subplot. So you know, I'm far more positive on this issue of Superman, and I'm excited to see how this is, because we know this is kind of going to be the last arc now. Or at least it seems to be, given that he's ended his run.
I think it is. I think in the Solicits, it kind of still had, this is something to do with the House of L was the title of the arc, I think. That's the name of the last arc. So I think it is that.
So, nah, very good. Not much more positive. I would happily give this a strong 8 out of 10. But Superman, if you like Bendis' typical style, I think you'll enjoy it. So there you go. The Flash 763, Kevin Shinick and Clayton Henry on the art. This is, of course, a fill-in writer, even artist as well, I suppose, technically. But I mean, it's less of a point to make in this one, I guess. What's interesting about this is I assumed this was going to be like a 2-parter or something, because the writer's on it for like 2 issues, right?
I don't know. Is Flash tying into Endless Winter stuff?
It is, yeah. So it's only got a couple of issues, and then
a handful, yeah.
4 tops, I think. But it's actually quite. I mean, it does tease the next issue at the end, but it's a pretty standalone story.
It is, yeah. I groaned on the very first panel. I read the preview and I was like, I don't know if I want to read this. Like the very first panel talks about the anniversary of his mother's death. I was like, oh, not again. Do I need this?
No, I will concur that I did get a little worried when we started talking about this again. So I did enjoy this story for the most part. I'm not always in love with the art. I'll say that. The faces are a bit in the overly caricature side. Yeah. Not in love with those. So what's weird about it is that the story is basically about how he speeds off and then realizes after a while that his ring is gone. Someone has basically pickpocketed his ring from him, and it's about him looking for his ring. And it's important to him. And Iris is like, "Well, can I just make a new one?" And he's like, "No, I can't." Even though we're all thinking, "Yeah, well, you probably could." So obviously it has some sort of sentimental value, which obviously at the end of the story he reveals to Iris what that value is. But what I liked about this is that it was just going for a fun story with a bit of heart at the end. It involved Trickster, and I kind of liked the start of the Trickster stuff, where it's like Trickster's like, no, I've not done anything criminal. I've opened a beachside attraction where people can get some food.
I'm a legitimate businessman. I think what what does he say? He gets more money selling overpriced chicken wings than he does in crime.
And he's it's like an arcade, sells some fast food. And Flash goes in, and there's like one of those grabber, machines that says like, "Win the Flash's ring," and it's like, okay, so somehow Trickster swiped the ring, and it's in this arcade machine. And I was like, okay, this is kind of amusing. It's kind of funny what they're tackling with this. My problem with this story, though, is that it kept adding more layers to it that I didn't think it needed to add. Because after this, it's like, okay, then he's got supervillains bidding on what Flash is going to, like how quickly Flash can do things, and then it becomes a VR thing where they're not actually there and it's other people with goggles.
I don't think it was supervillains bidding on things. It was just regular people bidding on how quickly he do things.
Okay, sorry. It was regular people bidding on how he's doing things, but then there was supervillains showing up, but then it turned out the supervillains were actually just VR, and it was like regular people with VR goggles on pretending to be the Riddler and these other smart characters.
They're playing a game and they're using them as the characters to try and outsmart Flash. It kept adding things. I'm like, just stop, slow down.
Yeah, because I thought the voice for Barry and the pacing of the dialogue in the story was, because this was a first time writer for me. I'd never read anything by this writer, and as I was realizing, this actually has a quite good flow to it, from the writing point of view. The only problem I have with it is conceptually is they kept adding more things to make it more complex. I'm like, no, honestly, when this was just the trickster has his ring in an arcade machine, that was amusing, and I was into that story. Go back to that, please.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. There was a handful of things that felt a little bit off in the dialogue. Like at the end when he gets back, and I was just like, oh, I forgot it was that day. And he's like, well, maybe now we can also think of it as the day he got his ring back. It's like, Barry, mate, you ain't remembering this in a year's time.
No.
And also, there was a weird coloring issue on that particular panel. He's holding the ring up, and it's red on the top instead of white, and it's repeatedly showed it. Even the page before, it's
sure,
white.
Yeah. That's a bit odd. Yeah, it just keeps adding more things. We find out the reason why the ring means so much to him, beyond just it having a suit in it, because he can make more of those, obviously, is that he actually made it out of his mother and his father's wedding rings. He fused them together, made the ring out of that, so it's got a lot of sentimental value. And it's one of those things where we keep going back to the death of his mother, or we keep going back to the death of the Waynes or whatever. We do this a lot in comics, and that part does make me groan a little bit. But given that most of it is just a fun let's find the ring story, I'm into that idea. It just gets far too complex, because when it showed up, it was like, wait, Riddler's here and Prankster, and like,
I'm like, what? Where do these all come from? This feels like extreme for this little mini plot.
It was like it kept trying to throw a new twist into the story, like every 3 pages.
I almost appreciated that. Oh no, they're not real, because I was questioning. I was like, why are these all involved here?
Yeah,
and it felt weird. And then it's like, oh, they're not. I was like, oh, okay, but then I'm like, but now we're doing VR.
Yeah, and I went back to the bidding because they were still bidding stuff by making them do stuff with the fake villains. So I mean, it was one of those things where I kind of appreciated the audacity of it by a point where I'm like, I started laughing at how much was been added, but I stopped like enjoying it as a story at that point and just started laughing at how crazy it was.
It could have been a 3-issue arc on its own, with each one of these things getting its own issue dedicated to it.
Pretty much. But yeah, so he explains all this to Iris. Sweet enough moment, it's all right. And then at the end, because they were teasing Dr. Alchemy before, so this is just at the end. Dr. Alchemy was like, "Yes, I'm going to strike now." Next issue.
Pretty much.
That's pretty much it. Like I say, are not particularly to my taste in how the artist draws faces, particularly.
I think I like it more than you do. I've read enough of Clayton Henry's stuff now that I've kind of adjusted. I'm just kind of used to seeing his long foreheads, elongated flash helmet in the thing. I've kind of just gotten used to it.
It varies page to page, because I think the last page with Dr. Alchemy, I think that looks fine. That's a fine page. I have nothing wrong with that page.
Yeah, I think it's usually particularly noticeable when Barry's got the cowl on, and it's a front-facing shot. It can look like his head's really long, or if he's running and he's got his head down, it feels like it goes back too far.
I do think Iris's face always looks a little bit off. Sometimes it's worse than others. There's one really bad example early on in the book when he's with her at the farmer's market, which she's making him do because he dragged her to an arcade lunch.
Which is where he lost the ring.
Yes. Because it was swiped. I do like the idea of someone to be able to swipe Barry's ring off of him without him noticing, even though he should be able to sense that because he's the Flash and everything's hyperspeed and whatnot.
You would think he just wasn't paying attention. He was too busy worrying about his wings.
Yes. I suppose that makes sense in a way.
No, I mean, everyone gets distracted by wings.
What are you giving Flash?
I'm giving it a 6.5. It's solid. It's enjoyable enough, but it's mired in just a handful of things that just drag it down for me.
Yeah, I'll probably just go to a straight 6. I think I don't regret reading it. There's some fun stuff in there, some nice ideas, but there's also too many ideas. I didn't love the art. So
it's also the sort of book where, if the next couple of issues are coming out on busy weeks, maybe I won't read this until the Endless Winter issues. Who knows? But also, if it's a quieter week, I'm not opposed to reading it either.
Sure. All right, Hawkman, issue 28. Robert Venditti writing with Fernando Passarin on the art. Go take it away.
Yeah, I'm going to start by saying I had forgotten, because in my head, for whatever reason, 28 was the final issue. I'm pretty sure it's 29. Because it was getting towards the last third of the issue. I'm like, how the hell is this wrapping up? There's no time left to do anything. How is this going to end? Don't tell me the book's ending on a weird cliffhanger. And then I got to the end and it was like, okay, there's clearly another issue. So I guess I've got that. Biggest problem with the issue, I say problem, I use that term lightly, is there's like no JSA, and that's pretty disappointing, given where we're set. We're in that time period. We were dealing with them last issue. It's kind of the big tease.
All of that stuff from you and Matt. Why don't you hop back in for a 3-issue JSA book?
No, it did feel like it was going to be that, especially last issue where we were doing a full JSA little mission, and then this issue completely takes that apart, and it dwells on this idea that Carter is he's afraid of death now for the first time. It was something we established last issue. He froze in the fight, if you recall, and Shira has to kind of talk him out of it. Like, look, you got to get over this. And the Hathset's dagger has been stolen from the safe. So they kind of do some voodoo with the with his mace that is also made from the same nth metal as the dagger, so they're kind of connected. And they find out that it's Anton Hasta, who is somehow alive, even though they thought they killed him. Who is the consciousness? He's the body for Hathset's consciousness. So well, maybe he's feigned death. And they're like, well, we need to go and stop him, clearly. So they go to him, and he's on a train traveling towards them. And they get in, and everyone's kind of just seemingly asleep on the train. They're like, this is a bit weird. And he comes out and he's like, yeah, all these people, they're not really asleep. I've been dealing with Anubis, who's like, the god of death and all that. And then they all get up, and it's basically he's got his own little zombie army. And we have like 4 or 5 pages of them fighting all these zombies on the train, and it's fantastic. Passarin absolutely nails it. Great little action sequence. But ultimately, it boils down to Carter versus Anton here, and there's this this fear throughout the whole fight where he can't deal with it. He can't deal with maybe this is it, and this is his last life, and he's for the first time in millennia, he's scared to die, and he just completely loses it. And have to say he's kind of capitalizing on this, and it basically boils down to he's cut him 3 or 4 times, good couple of slashes, across the face, the side, and it boils down to Takara kind of finally accepting what's happening. He's like, no, you might hurt me, but you're not going to hurt her. And he's like, I'm not afraid. And the final page is him kind of doing the thing where they pull the knife into them, to stop resisting, and lets himself get stabbed pretty healthily through the midsection. And that's the final page of the issue. Is kind of this shock moment of him being stabbed. Is this the final moment? Is this how he dies? And it kind of has some weight when it's going into the final issue of the book. It's obviously not going to be the end of Hawkman. Whatever they do, he'll either be alive or they'll restore the reincarnation somehow. Whatever they do, obviously they're not killing Hawkman, but it has some weight here at the end of the book. That's really interesting. I do wish we'd had a little bit more time to build up this fear of him, and then this acceptance. It feels a little bit rushed here at the end. I suspect that was probably just because Venditti got told he has like 3 issues to wrap it up, instead of whatever he had planned. Because we do know he did have more planned. But everything that is here is great. I just wish it was spread out a little bit more. Art's really, just top quality. Passarin's been killing it on this book for, a year, however long it's been that he's been on it. And I've very little, if anything, to complain about in the art department. And overall, I'm going to give it an 8.5. It was close to the 9 in terms of everything it does, but it's just the fact that it's a little bit too much rushed into the issue that holds it back.
Okay. So I'll take me on to Batman and the Outsiders issue 17. Bryan Hill writing with Marcio Takara on the art. Notably, final issue of the book. And I think what's interesting is that this is kind of an epilogue, but it also seems to leave off a lot of characters in places where they're maybe going to pop up next somewhere. Not necessarily in their own books, but it definitely leaves Cass, in Gotham. It leaves Sophia goes with Shiva. At the end of this, she kind of takes the path that she wants to go down, the more lethal revenge route than what Batman's willing to offer. It's a quiet issue where they're at a farmhouse. Bruce has bought her a farm, basically. because she likes horses. And he's trying, and I do kind of like that. Back from the very first issue, this whole thing's been kind of about Sophia in a way, where even the very final issue is kind of about trying to get her to sort of, make her whatever choice she's going to make. And it's not that Bruce is determined for her to become a Bat family member. He's kind of happy for her to also just, live on a farm if she wants for the rest of her days and just sort of stay out of the whole, superhero / villain game. But Shiva is talking to her. And it's interesting because Shiva, of course, has been trying to do this with Cass and Duke all series. Like, she's been trying to persuade them, her own daughter and Duke, into following her footsteps and going down her path. And there's kind of almost an acceptance from her in this issue that it's not going to work. They're just who they are already, and it's not going to change. And she's tried her best, but Sophia, she can kind of take on as a surrogate daughter. She can kind of mold her because she's more willing to have that revenge. She's still having nightmares about her father's death. The whole thing's working, but you have Black Lightning and Katana. They are getting closer. They kind of go off together. She goes off to master her new sword power that she got back in the annual, which is she's got a flaming sword basically now. Delightful. So that's one of those little things that might pop up, like when we're reading an event, or maybe she shows up in Detective Comics or something at some point. Like if she pulls out a flaming sword and you're like, wait the hell, why does she have a flaming sword? I'll be like, well, that was a Batman the Outsiders thing.
Did this replace her other sword, or is it just an upgrade?
I think it's. I can't remember specifically, but I think it was
obviously her sword has history.
I think it was an addition. It's the same sword, but now it's got this additional quality to it.
Okay.
I'd have to go back and look at the annual again to be sure, but I think that was the gist I remember. It's this Bruce kind of with his alternate Bat family in the sense that it's the Outsiders rather than the usual faces. They have dinner. They're trying to be nice to each other. And some of the key points here that I really liked was Jefferson noting that he's not like Bruce and he can't pretend that he's okay with things, because Bruce does a really good job of smiling at the dinner table and being Bruce Wayne. And we know it's a facade because we know who he really is, but Jefferson can't even pretend. He's like, no, my life has been changed. Ra's al Ghul, the fight changed me. People I cared about have died. He just can't put on a brave face and pretend that the world hasn't changed. So, he bonds, and there's a great page here actually where you can tell Takara was having fun with the art here. And as much as obviously I do prefer Soy, Takara is by no means a slouch. And there's a page here where he's kind of just pondering on the porch, and Katana's like, hey, what are you thinking about? And there's this page where he's thinking about possible futures, about where he fits in now that he's kind of like a proper superhero, and he's what his power levels are. So it's split into 3 panels, and there's one where he's fighting with John Stewart. So you've got this, he's down at the bottom with the green lightning, or the blue lightning. John's up top with the green light, and it's this great contrast. And then the second panel is him and Wonder Woman fighting something, and the gold lasso, so it's this gold strip down the middle. Then the third panel is the Superman panel, where it's Superman up top, he's down below, and it's this kind of he's basically imagining him and side by side with the various Justice League members. This idea that this is the world that he's entering into. He's not just a school teacher anymore. He can't go back to just that normal life. He doesn't know how he feels about that. He doesn't know if he wants that. He has no idea what he wants to do. And this is where she kind of says, I'm going on this journey to try and master this new fire power that I've got. And suggests that he comes with, and they can grow together. The standout of the issue, though, is probably a scene where Bruce comes to talk to Cass. Because one of the things that was brought up throughout this run is that Shiva keeps saying to Cass, you're not a real Bat family member. He doesn't give you a bat to put on your suit because he doesn't care about you the same way he does Babs. You're not a Robin. You're this separate thing. And Bruce comes to speak to her and makes it very clear that, it's not because he doesn't trust her. It's not because he doesn't see her as part of that. It's more that he actually recognizes that she's a lot more like him than any of they are, and that she has to kind of make her own choice to become what she's becoming, rather than him just sort of giving her a conduit. So I actually love how this sort of ties into what we just had in the Joker War special, because there's something really special about him saying, no, I'm not going to force my logo, my symbol onto you, and then her choosing it anyway. There's something kind of powerful and beautiful about that. And they hug at the end. She gets off she's on the bed reading the book, and she jumps off and hugs him. It's just a really sweet moment. It's kind of what you want. I love when team books have these quieter issues, and I love them sprinkled throughout the runs, but certainly here's an ending. It's a really nice kind of like wrap up of like what the character journeys have been for them all in this, relatively short, tight run.
It kind of feels like this is why it's an odd number to end on, because usually you'd end on 16 or 18.
Yeah.
It feels like it was probably going to be 16 issues, and he asked for one more to get this epilogue, right?
Yeah, well, it was going to be 12, and he got 5 more, so I don't know if he asked for 5 or...
I think it was you can have one more arc, and they were going to reconsider again at the end of that arc if you can have another one. So it was probably a 4-issue arc, and then it's like, they're like, all right, you have one more to do your epilogue after
that. Shiva does knock out Bruce with some spiked tea at the end, basically just so that Sophia can sneak out when he's not conscious. And she basically makes it clear that she's made a choice, she's going with her, and, you're just going to have to accept, whatever she's going to become. Like, you're going to have to accept it, and maybe you'll be happy with what she becomes. But Sophia, when she was talking to Shiva earlier on, did kind of like sound like, yeah, she wants to like keep fighting back, but she doesn't think that Bruce's way, of sending people to Arkham and like having them get back out is really worth her time. She wants something more permanent. So I think what I like about Sophia as a character is that they've kind of set her up she's not like going down this villainous path. She's not like Red Hood, where she's this angry character who just wants to kill everything and has to be calmed down. It's more of a quiet, sort of more considered thing where she's like, I want to fight back and make a difference, but she's thought about it and does genuinely think that she's going to have to like be more lethal to actually achieve anything. So I think it's a bit more of a nuanced approach to a character like this that isn't just angry at the world, I want to kill everything, kind of.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that in the right context, although Red Hood is often not the right context. So let me just make that very clear. But no, that's the end of it. It ends with a really moody panel of Bruce just sitting in shadow in the farmhouse, just kind of feeling like he's failed a little bit because Sophia's made this choice. So it does kind of feel like it's very intentionally left all these characters in different places, either emotionally or even some cases literally physically going off on a journey to do something. Not that I think we're going to see these journeys especially, but I do think that someone may pick up the idea that, hey, maybe Black Lightning and Katana being close is something that will be relevant again. So maybe they'll reference that they've been on this journey together in a future book somewhere, whenever it's relevant. So, I think this has been a really fun little run. 17 issues is, obviously I always hope for more when it comes to these things when I really enjoy a run. But it's been a really nice companion book that's focused on these smaller characters. I mean, Bruce has been there, but it's not really been about him for the most part. So, this last issue was great. I would happily give it an 8.5. I think it's maybe one of the better issues of the whole book because I think all of it's been enjoyable, but there's definitely some issues in the middle where it's like, okay, so this is the action issue in between some plot setup and whatever. I think this, because it's taking everything that it's done and kind of sort of saying, okay, this was the point of all. This was the point of like Sophia's journey. This was the point of like, like her trying to tempt Cass. I mean, Shiva trying to like tempt Cass and Duke, and ultimately them not going that way, but her finding someone in Sophia feels like it's really been the main backbone of the story in terms of what's been going on the whole time. Even though we've been dealing with all this big stuff with Raz and saving the world as we always are because it's a superhero comic, but no, solid. So 8.5 on the final issue of that. So sorry to see it go, but hey, we have tons of stuff in January apparently, so I need to make room for some.
Yeah, I made a little schedule during one of your books. I'll show you at the end.
Oh dear. Okay. Well, Rorschach issue 1, right at the Black Label books. Tom King writing, Jorge Fornes on the art. In fact, hell, we're on to the Tom King section, I suppose, if you want to call it that.
It is this week, yeah.
Yeah, we got a little back-to-back Tom King, and we'll start with the new book. That's an interesting one for various reasons. We have this Rorschach book. We have so what's the plot? This is this Rorschach himself, and with the exception of obviously kind of an interesting twist at the end of this, or a reveal at the end of this. Much like other things, much like Doomsday Clock, much like, to an extent, the TV show, even though it didn't really have a central Rorschach to do this with. Yeah, so someone in a Rorschach mask. But that doesn't necessarily mean we're actually starting with, this is the Rorschach from Watchmen. This is not Walter Kovacs, back again somehow, some way. This is something else. And then there's a couple of things in this book that seem to indicate that it's actually taking place in the same world as the TV show.
It is, and Tom King has confirmed that.
He's confirmed that. which what's interesting about that is that it still takes place in the world of the comic, because the TV show was a direct sequel to the comic book, so it still takes place in this form of continuity with the original comic book.
It does, but what it means is it's not in continuity with Doomsday Clock.
No, that is true. And that may be for the best, because I don't know how you...
No, I have no idea. But I mean, it was a decision that King obviously decided to make. And I think there's only really like one or two brief mentions of the TV show really in this.
Well, I mean, there's two key things. They mentioned that after what happened in Oklahoma, and that Oklahoma is where a lot of the show was set, and the idea that Robert Redford is a president is something that's mentioned in the background a lot in the show. So it's more just little things like that. I assume you had no problem reading this, despite not having... Oh, you have seen the show, actually. What am I talking about?
I have seen the show now.
You saw it later, but... Yeah.
I did. I watched it, I don't know, start of this year, maybe. Didn't love it, but... We've been over that. It's a separate debate.
Yeah, I don't know. Connor's weird. But I don't think if you haven't seen the show that any of this... Like, those two little like contextual references to the show, I don't think would matter to you if you haven't seen it.
No, not at all. And I'm not holding anything to do with the show against this or vice versa. I think if you hadn't watched the show, those just play like contextual history of, oh, this is what's changed between Watchmen and now.
The way to look at this, just like the show and just like Doomsday Clock, is that it's just another standalone sequel to Watchmen. And this is like Tom King's interpretation of where this story goes at some point.
Which, in its own right, is something I had a bit of a problem with. I mean, I've sort of spoken about this before. I'm kind of bored of Watchmen sequels. Mm-hmm. And going into this, I was like, okay, I'm kind of over this. And it had to actively, it has an uphill fight to win me over going into this issue. It was kind of my mindset.
Does the fact
rather than coming in and going, oh, it's an exciting new Tom King book, I'm kind of like, right, okay, why do I need a Rorschach book?
Does the fact that it's an exceptionally crafted and wonderful book change your mind at all?
No, because I think it's just okay. I think it's fine.
God.
This is on the lower end of the Tom King scale for me. It's not anything wrong. I don't think it's a bad issue by any means. But it doesn't grab me. I don't think it's like fantastic or anything like that.
I'll tell you what I love about this. I love that it feels so different, because I was a little concerned, even though I love Mr. Miracle and I'm loving Strange Adventure. I keep almost saying Adam Strange when I say that book. But I was a little concerned of having two of those types of Tom King books at the same time. I was a little worried that it was going to be like, am I going to feel like there's an overload of that particular? Because I think Strange Adventures and Mr. Miracle definitely feel like they're both of the same style of Tom King. They both feel like they're of a similar tone, feel, atmosphere, even though they're doing different stories.
They're deconstructions of certain human elements of the human psyche. So
when I got a couple of pages into this and realized we were doing gritty detective mystery, like stuff, I think Matt on Twitter, I don't know how much of his books he read, but he read this because he was talking about how this felt like kind of like a Brubaker Phillips book almost in some ways.
I can see that.
We start with this, we see a Rorschach, whoever he is, running towards someone on it's like a catwalk above like a theater. And he's getting shot. He gets shot repeatedly in the chest and then once in the face. And then there's a 2-page spread showing kind of where they are. And it's him and there's another woman also in a costume of some kind above, which looks like a presidential rally. You got all the balloons. And clearly there was some sort of an assassination attempt by someone. Maybe these characters specifically. And the rest of the book obviously does sort of say that. But, I'm just saying, based on this page, we're looking at it going...
Yeah, there's an implication that they've just been stopped.
Yeah. And then we're interested... Now, the only complaint I have about this issue, I think, right? And the art is wonderful. The art is phenomenal. Is that the choice of the hairstyle on the main detective made me think this wasn't present day. It made me think it was like the 80s.
I get where you're coming from.
Look at his hair. He looks like he's like this guy. Looks like he's in the 80s.
I don't think the jacket helps either.
Yeah, it's the brown jacket with that hair. Because later on they talk about things being online, and obviously they mentioned the TV show. And I was actually trying to think of the TV show, and I was like, wait, so something already happened in Oklahoma, but this is set before the show. And then afterwards they mentioned they do stuff online. I'm like, wait, online? Oh, it's not in the 80s then. Okay, I guess this just threw me.
I think it's just more that's evocative of the tone they're going for.
Yeah, it is. They're definitely going for the 70s gritty political thriller kind of style. So it's a minor thing. Once I realized that, it wasn't an issue at all. And if anything, I kind of appreciate that they're gone for such a look, despite the fact that it's not set then. But it did confuse me a little bit at first because I thought it was a period piece.
I never did, but I wonder if that's just because I knew I'd seen before I read it. King confirming it was set after the show. So I wonder if just because I knew that there was never any.
I didn't.
My brain never questioned it.
I think I'd heard it was maybe related to the show, but I didn't see any confirmation or anything like that. And even then, I didn't know it was set after. I thought it could be set before, set during.
Sure,
whatever.
yeah, no, I get where you're coming from. There's no reason for you to jump to that if you don't know.
Yeah. But no, this was like a sort of very kind of like going through the beats of the investigation. It's him talking to security guards, checking the bodies. The Rorschach is like 80-something years old. They're trying to get an ID on him. The girl's like 19 and she's this radical who teamed up with them. Like, we're getting all these details, the coloring shifting. I love whenever it goes to the flashbacks and they're talking, because you're in this like autopsy room. It's this cold, clinical room. Everything's blue and white. And then you go to the flashbacks when they're sort of theorizing what happened and why she already has a bullet wound, and everything's orange and red and all the rest of it.
Yeah, that's Dave Stewart on the colors, who is like in my upper tier of colorists working right now. He is spectacular, and I think he pairs very nicely with Fornes' style.
Yeah, then looking through the evidence, they've got like all the costumes laid out on the table, and they're talking about this mysterious tape. There was a tape on them that was like it's so old that they have to like find a device to play it without damaging it and all the rest of it. And they're talking about like how the mask, there's nothing unique about the mask. It's like a Rorschach mask you can buy from any store, because in this world, obviously, people have been making Rorschach masks, for a long time.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Well, even just knowing from the TV show, there's literally an entire group of people who wear them.
Even if that wasn't a thing in the TV show, it wouldn't surprise me, because I'm like, yeah, of course they do.
Yeah. So, no, I liked all this. And he goes and questions the surviving security guard who's basically on his deathbed. He's dying in the hospital. But he tells this story about how they tried to like go in and apprehend them. And I love the sequencing of this where they're all sort of, it keeps doing this side view of them going up to the door, and then like the guard gets his hand caught in the door and he tries to fire the gun, but when he pulls his hand out, he's like, oh shit, where's your gun? And then you just get all these bullets running through. I think the fact that it keeps returning to that same profile shot of the hall really gives it this sense of space that continues throughout. So it feels really stark when you get the exact same sort of angle and panel on the next couple of pages where the bullets are all coming through the door. And likewise, the coloring here is so good, because this is a white wall. It's one of those, these like white, like brick painted walls. And it's all white, but whenever the gun fires, the background, suddenly tints orange. And the gunfire itself is yellow, and you got all the blams, on the panel. And it also makes the blood stand out. After all the gunshots happen and he's on his own and the other guards are dead, you just like, again, it's this very white and cold and blue hallway, but there's just these splatters of red on the floor.
Yeah, the art is wonderful. I don't have much bad to say about the art. I mean, going back to Fornes, even on Tom King's Batman run, where it was in the points where I wasn't enjoying it, he would often have Fornes kind of became a kind of regular at the back end of that run. Always looked stunning. Yeah,
and this is it. Then we get to the full page where this Rorschach walks out and just sort of says, as he looks down at the guard.
Yeah. And do you know, the sort of vibe I get from the art with Fornes and Stewart's colours as well, in particular. I get very like year one, like Batman year one sort of vibe.
Yeah, it's kind of got that sort of vibe. I can see that. So he hears this tape, and it's all speaking in code, but it mentions a lot of names. So they're looking into all these names, and they're trying to figure out. And one of them is really interesting because, again, tying into the comic book from Watchmen, but there's this other comic book. This old guy. It turns out he was a comic book artist, in his younger years. He made this pirate comic, not the pirate comic from Watchmen, not the flying.
Pontius Pirate is possibly my favorite pun in this whole issue.
But so they're looking into this Pontius Pirate comic, and they've looked at his apartment, and they're hearing these record. I love the close up panels of the tape recorder playing the tape, because it's the old spools of tape, the big ones.
Yeah, because I don't remember the show well enough to think what the technology was like in that, but like this guy's still using a pager and a payphone, which again probably doesn't help you with separating the time period as easily as you'd think.
There's also like a blimp at one point. in the sky.
Yeah.
Although I'm not sure if that's a real blimp or just like a sort of big inflatable thing for promotion reasons. Because
I think it's that, yeah, because it is tied down.
Yeah, it's tied down. It says vote Redford at the top. It's worth mentioning the presidential candidate that was almost assassinated was the Republican candidate. So one of the things from the show, and this is maybe the one thing that does help me from the show, is the idea that a lot of the characters in the show who were not liberal really hated everything that Reagan, or not Reagan, sorry, I'm going to a real actor president, everything that Redford had done for people. They weren't a fan of his policies. So, no, wonderful stuff, I thought. So yeah, they're looking into who these characters are. They've got a bit more details by the end, and they're looking into it. But the big thing at the end, though, is this reveal where it talks about how there's very little record of the real Rorschach because the prison that he put in burned down. But he's being told over the phone that hey, like there was a collector of cape stuff who paid off a guard to get his fingerprints. So there actually is fingerprints of the original Rorschach out there, and somehow the set on the body match the body they've got. So this is obviously a big hook at the end of the first issue. This is your big hook to say, okay, what's going on? And my instinct is that it's not him. I don't think they're going to undo the Rorschach death, unless they go down some sort of path where Manhattan didn't kill him. They just sort of teleported into the future.
That would be extremely ballsy as a move to go down.
That would be ballsy. I would think that these prints have somehow they've made copies to graft onto people's fingers or something like that. The idea being that they can kind of
it's not that implausible.
No, I'm leaning towards something like that. But it's a really good hook at the end though, where it's because you're seeing these recreated panels of Kovacs getting his lineup shot done, his mugshot. And it's just the eyes of the detective at the end. I thought this was incredibly moody. I love these 70s thriller vibes of it. The art is gorgeous. I like the mystery. I like the going through, let's look at the evidence, let's look at the bodies, who are the suspects. I thought this was a breeze to read. I flew through it. And...
Oh no, I thought it was at points I felt like, I'm making so much progress, I'm getting through it, and then at other points I feel like it stopped dead with tons and tons of dialogue. I mean, look at that final page. That might be the wordiest final page I've ever seen.
No, it is.
Especially as a final page, it's extreme.
I don't think having lots of words though inherently means that it doesn't flow quickly. Bizarrely.
I get where you're coming from. For me, though, it does in some extent where I feel like at points where there's almost no dialogue or caption boxes to read, where I'm getting through it, and then I get to a page like this where it feels like a wall of text, where I feel it slow down, and I have to take it much slower, and I don't think that's necessarily the intention.
I think for me, I always kind of correlate to how things function, in the comparison to a movie or something like that, or maybe a TV show's a better comparison with comics. But I can hear all of this conversation playing out on a montage as we're seeing all these images that are on this last page, because there's a lot of panels here. There's a lot of panels of different things.
Yeah, it's 12, 15 panels, whatever it is. And
it recreates the idea of a sort of gritty 70s thriller of a character on the phone dropping this bombshell on him as we're seeing this montage of all these moments. It gives me this feeling and a vibe, and it's something that can absolutely backfire. And comics in lesser hands, I think, do end up feeling really just wordy and drag on and are a chore to read. I think this and stuff that I've not read much from Brubaker, but the examples I have read, and then and obviously something that you disagree with me on is Bendis, but I think you can have wordy sometimes that works really well. It always still feels like it's flowing. I feel like I get a vibe from it because of the way it is told. So I thought this flowed really well for me. I was kind of all into this.
Yeah, I didn't love it. I don't hate it. I don't think it's terrible. Maybe part of this is me just kind of not wanting / needing more Watchmen material right now. Maybe if this was in 3 or 4 years' time, I'd have a completely different opinion on it. I'd be feeling a bit fresher.
And for the people watching the video version, I did not intentionally try to make that look like I was doing the Superman open for my Screams After Midnight shirt. It was just kind of, I happened to be wearing that.
Yeah.
So, what are you giving it though? What are you giving Rorschach?
I'm gonna give it a I'm debating how generous I want to be thanks to the art. I think I'll give it a 6.5 for the art. Otherwise, it might have been a 6.
9 out of 10. I loved it. I loved it. Matt, please come back, because I think you're going to have a better opinion on this. Please, Matt.
No, I'm glad that people enjoy it. It's not like there are some things where I read it and I go, I don't understand why people like this. I kind of get this, but I'm just not feeling it. So enjoy it.
Are you reading issue 2?
I don't know is the honest answer. And then looking ahead at that schedule I made, when it comes out in the
it's got 2 more issues to win you over before that busy week 1.
It is, and it is admittedly on the quietest week of the month, but it's still like not a light week of content to read. So I don't know. Honestly, we'll see how I feel when issue 2 drops.
All right. I loved it, but hey ho. So, Strange Adventures issue 6, Tom King with Mitch Gerads and Doc Shaner. Obviously, this is the known quantity because we're halfway through this now, and where to begin with this one? This is once again split into 2. You've got the main present day story, and you've got the war story. And I kept having to remind myself that the story that we get from the war is the kind of the curated one, because I kind of felt like it was revealing more stuff as it was going that we didn't know. That maybe it wasn't going like down the darkest path that it can do, because there's clearly more to learn and more that Terrific's hinting at. Because Terrific, the main plot of this is that Terrific and Alana are meeting up to talk about stuff.
Yeah, that's the bulk of the issue, probably about 70%.
Yeah, and but we get because that second page, which is a 2-page spread of just Alana and Adam, like looking out at the horizon on Ran, is just beautiful. It's gorgeous stuff.
Oh, it's fantastic.
And they're basically gearing up for the fight, right? This is kind of them getting into the war. They tried to make peace briefly with the Pict, but it doesn't work, so it becomes this fight. I actually love the callback later, because there's a moment here where they kind of count down 3, 2, 1 as they're shooting the Pict, and then later on when Alana's with Terrific and she throws a snowball at the bell, she says 3, 2, 1, and it kind of was this indication to me that she's still in a war. Maybe not in quite the same way, but she's still thinking like that.
Yeah, but this was such a fascinating issue in terms of what Alana may or may not know, after all.
Yeah, this was the thing, because I think we always assumed that she was, if anything, the one who was more knowledgeable about stuff, and she was keeping things from Adam. But at the end of this issue, it kind of suggests that maybe Adam's keeping something from her.
Yeah.
All the stuff in the snow, the art from Gerads is wonderful. You've got Alana and Terrific talking about various things. They go and get a drink, then they go to they go to the bell and they talk about stuff. Terrific, brings up the poem, No Man is an Island. Which Alana very, harshly kind of says, nah, everyone's an island. And it's this very cynical view of life, essentially, that she's maybe going to have to learn to get over it some way, I imagine, by the end of this. But maybe one of the more important conversations is them kind of becoming more honest about what happened to each of their kids. Because, Terrific also lost a child. It wasn't born yet. Talks about how his pregnant wife was in a car crash. And, I actually really like this moment from him, like where he says he feels guilty, but not because he wasn't there, because he didn't maybe he suggested to go for a drive or whatever, but more that deep down he's not even sure if he was, maybe because he didn't want the kid in the first place. Like that was something he already knew he felt. So he doesn't know if he's a little relieved that he doesn't actually have to be a father when he didn't want to be, and he feels guilty for that kind of even just having that in his head for a moment is something that he feels guilt over. And rightfully so. It's a really complex set of emotions, understandably.
And it's been a thing driving him for this whole book.
Yeah.
Going back to that first major issue of his.
Yeah. So, and Alana kind of just sort of says, oh, it's simple, the Pict are merciless, and doesn't go into more detail until he shares more, and then she goes into it and talks about how Adam came back kind of different, and he was sort of held for days, and he's never talks about what they did to him, like how bad it was, how much they tortured him, or whatever. which does, and whenever we cut to the Rand stuff, it's always this glory of battle, like him and Alana, like fighting.
Even you talked about that 2-page spread at the start of them, looking over the city. We have it repeated again almost here towards the end, where it's the same thing. They're sat looking over the view, and they go, "Oh, Adam," but it's over the war this time. All the big robot sort of ships are all there, and there's destruction and fire, and it's definitely romanticizing this horrific act, which is again part of the story that we have to remember.
Absolutely. I think the reason why I was saying that it felt like they were doing more stuff is there's a moment at the end of the war story in this issue where he chooses to or they get knocked down, and this is when he gets taken. So presumably this is what she was talking about when he does get taken, because they're both knocked out at the end of the issue and he's dragged away. That's kind of the cliffhanger. Although I actually think the cliffhanger in the present day stuff is more effective, because where she's left standing in the cold, literally standing in the cold.
Yeah.
Both
there's a great moment,
both literally and figuratively, where Terrific's questioning things, and she's finally getting into more detail about how he went out with Alana and he came back and he informed her of what happened to the daughter, and Terrific just kind of says, "Well, did you bury the body?" And she's like, "There was no body. We just had a monument made for her." He's like, like, so you
and then he goes, "Oh, I guess I do believe you," because that was part of the earlier conversation. And
so it's this idea where he's essentially implying that you never saw a body, right? Maybe you should talk to Adam about what really happened, and that's the moment where like she's standing out there. He says you should go. It's cold out there, and she's just standing there, and it's almost like this is the first time she's ever even considered the idea that he might have lied in some fashion about what happened.
And if he did, which let's go under the assumption that he did, it means okay, she's not dead. Is she alive? Did she side with the Picts? Like, what exactly happened? Did they just kidnap her?
Did he offer her for peace? Like, was she like a bargaining chip?
Yeah. Did they make him do something to her, like after the torture? Like, we just don't know.
Yeah. Well, the torture was a separate.
No, I know, but I mean, maybe they tortured him then as well.
Sure.
For all I know.
But it does make wonder though, like Terrific's talk about his guilt and how he felt guilty about how he never really wanted a kid. Like, I do wonder if that's something where he recognizes something in Adam, something similar. Like, did Adam, like, the books, the story of the war that's coming from the memoir is presenting him as this loving father and they both love their daughter and she's the light of the world. But in reality, is it different? Did he not want a daughter? Was it more strained, a relationship? Does he recognize something in that? And that's just assuming that it's even similar to Terrific. Maybe it's going to be completely different, but it's just the idea that he recognizes that Strange has a more conflicted sense of guilt or something that's different than just, oh, the daughter died tragically and they couldn't prevent it, and that's it. It's that simple.
Yeah. It's so interesting. Like the layers of this, because like I say, for issues now, we've been assuming Alana's like behind it all, being the manipulative wife, and I think the book has intentionally led us down that path. I think we were making those assumptions out of nowhere, but this here kind of is like, well, maybe not. Maybe, I mean, she's definitely still manipulated in some regards and got a plan, but when it comes to this big key element, maybe she really does know nothing.
That point I made about the snowball and her saying the same thing she did when she was shooting the Pict, I think that maybe shows why she is so manipulative. It's to her, she's still fighting a war. Everything's strategizing. Everything is putting pieces in place and all that stuff. But it maybe
talking about latitude when she was on the balcony.
Yes, and then maybe that's kind of similar to her looking out at the planet, in this issue. But I wonder if the point here is that, okay, she has her own problems because she's not really left that mindset and she's not really accepted that she's at peace or she should be at peace. But maybe this idea that this memoir that's all glossied up and hides the truth is not just hiding it from the public, it's also hiding it from her. Like, maybe she doesn't, maybe to her it's not actually that far-fetched, most of this. Maybe, okay, it's glossing over, it's maybe making some of the more visceral battle stuff a bit lighter, and she knows that was a bit more dark or serious or whatever. But the idea being that the most serious thing that's the lie about the daughter, is something that she actually also is in the dark.
It is being lied to about.
Yeah. So that's fascinating. In fact, hell, this panel of her standing in the snow, that full page spread, might even be my favorite page of the whole book so far, just because of the impact that it has at this point.
It's up there, and you know, that conversation with, you know, out by the bell, you know, showing how, I don't want to say ruthless she is, but how self-aware she is of her own abilities. You know, she talks about how, you know, her dad says she's the third smartest person on Ran. You know, he's first, Adam's the second, and then she's third. And she's like, I don't think that. I think, you know, she tells you know, when you lap people, you can look behind, but just be that far ahead. And this idea that she obviously thinks that, no, she is orders of magnitude smarter than both of them, is kind of scary and almost villainous, right? With the way, you know, she kind of thinks of it like that.
Or maybe it's even the idea that this is foreshadowing the idea that she thinks she's smarter than both of them. But if Adam's been lying to her this whole time, then is she that smart? Like, you know, is she smarter than him?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if that's maybe kind of foreshadowing that a little bit in that scene too. So no, because you know, she says she's really cynical. She says, "In the end, we're all islands." You know, going back to the poem, and no one asks who the bell is tolling for. No one even hears it ring. Is a really, really disconnected and jaded thing to say.
She's been completely defeated by the war and everything else. Maybe even her daughter was the breaking point.
Yeah, I mean, again, if this book is, you know, in a lot of the ways, the last book was about anxiety and about depression and all those things. This book is more about how the war has affected this pair of people, this couple, both of whom in this case fought in the war, and both of whom are dealing with a partner who have fought in the war. So
yeah,
it's dealing with a lot of these aftershocks.
A really strong link with the parenthood as well. It obviously was a huge part of Mr. Miracle, and this is in a very different way. This is dealing with the loss of a child, whereas that was, you know, dealing with the birth of a child. But
and yeah, because Mr. Miracle, the birth of the child was kind of the big hopeful thing in that book. That was the thing. That was the light that kind of like sort of gave him strength to kind of ultimately come through. And you know, that was like a something that bonded them and made them stronger. And here it's maybe the potential that that can also be the thing that breaks people apart if it goes down that path, like it maybe does here.
Yeah, makes sense.
So yeah, no. So surprise, Strange Adventures was fantastic again. Obviously they are gorgeous. Going back to I talk about this coloring change a lot, but if you I talked about that first 2-page spread where they're looking out at the planet. It's a lot more blue. The time at the end when it's the war, it's a lot of red because there's explosions everywhere. Really simple, but it's effective. Also, was that dinosaur in the first one? I don't remember.
I don't think so. I think that's more because the first one they're looking out over the city, and the second one is the war field.
I'll be honest, the dinosaur just blends in with the coloring so much that I don't think I noticed it was a dinosaur looking thing until now. I thought it was just like part of the mountains.
It's you know, it's just because obviously we've seen like a lot of lizard creatures.
Yes.
In this book already, so I guess it's just one of those.
Yeah. A lot of the battle stuff is very much it's very visceral in the sense that it feels like they're at the brink of defeat, but they ultimately seems like they're going to win in the end before he's kidnapped. But it definitely feels like someone who would be writing the story to like try and make it feel like they're almost going to lose until that last second when they're going to win.
It is very much a war movie.
Yes.
And again, you know, it's this romanticized ideal, like, you know, storytelling version of it where, okay, you know, it's got to get dark before they win. That's, you know, your act 2, so to speak. And this is following that same structure. And that's kind of the point.
So there you go. What are you giving Strange Adventures issue 6?
That's a 9.
I will also give it a 9. So there we go. That is that. That'll take us out of the part of the show. We pick our favorite stuff of the week, favorite panel / moment, favorite cover, favorite art, and of course top 5 books, which I think we both comfortably have enough to do that with this week. There'll be no shorter lists.
Sure, yeah.
So we'll start off with panel / moment the week, and since there's only 2 of us, you just get to go first for all of them. So on you go.
Fine. Well, I'm taking it's cold out there. That full page from Strange Adventures.
I mean, I have no problem just taking that. However, I'm not going to. I think for the sake of variety, I am going to take the Superboy Prime Punch. 2.0.
That was another. There's another good option that I thought you might pick, which is kind of why I left it.
Yeah.
There's enough good moments this week that I don't think either of us had to really stretch to find different ones.
Yeah, I'm not too bothered with picking that, to be honest, in the grand scheme of things. So we'll go with that. And then favourite cover of the week, which is always...
Yeah, I'm just trying to have
tricky.
a look at some of them. I like the Wonder Woman variant, as I always do, the Middleton, unsurprisingly. I quite like some of the Rorschach variants. I'm not sure who's doing which one. I like this kind of like the brown background with like the the hieroglyphs that are on it, and he's kind of stood there. I think that might be the Carrie Andrews one actually.
Sure, yeah, there's a black and white version of that as well.
Oh yeah, okay, I see that. I do really like that. And then the main Hawkman cover is really solid.
I really like the Rorschach one where he's punching the beefy dude in the face. There's like a shadow behind him.
Is that with the kind of the Watchman writing down the side?
Yeah. It's one of those ones, yeah. That one's really pretty, I think.
Oh, that is good, yeah. I'm gonna go with the Carrie Andrews Rorschach, I think, ultimately, but yeah, good choice of covers.
Yeah, I think I'm tempted to see that Rorschach cover, but I think I'm actually going to have to go with the Shaner Strange Adventures cover and just be kind of boring, but it's just...
Yeah.
It's basically perfect.
For anyone not sure, that's the one where they're alive.
Yes. I mean, if that's how we're going to differentiate, then yes.
I mean, I think it's a pretty clear signifier in this particular set of covers.
Okay. Then best art of the week. And this is a tough choice this week, so good luck with this.
It is actually. Because, you've got Fornes on Rorschach, who does a great job with Stuart. You've got Gerads and Shayna on Strange Adventures. I really enjoyed Passarin on Hawkman. And then also, of course, Capullo on Death Knell. It's nothing to sniff at. I think I'm ultimately going to go with Strange Adventures. But, I mean, they're all pretty solid choices this week.
This is something else because it says something that a really solid Ivan Reis issue and a really solid Marcio Takara issue are both not even in the running. Which is telling you how I feel about these other ones that have already been mentioned, which is obviously Rorschach, Strange Adventures, and Death Metal. Death Metal I think is definitely number 3 for me, but picking between... Tom King, of course, who has blackmail material on every artist in DC Comics because he seems to always get the best ones.
I suspect that the artists are lining up to work with him because they know how well his books sell and they want that royalty money.
That's entirely possible. They also get to draw some really interesting stuff, I think, as well. I think the artist in both is bordering perfect. I think I'm going to go with Rorschach. Maybe just because it's different, because I've already had 5 issues of Strange Adventures, and Rorschach's the new kind of Batman Year One looking, sort of moody, different style, different feeling. But it's so close. It's so damn close. So don't read into that too much. All right, top 5 books of the week. On you go.
Oh God, I wasn't prepared for some reason. I think Strange Adventures is number 1 for sure, with Death Metal not too far behind it. And then Hawkman, then Wonder Woman, and then I guess Rorschach is kind of there. It's that and kind of Flash at the bottom of the rung for me, but I think Rorschach the art I'll kind of bumps it above Flash overall.
I had 3 9 out of 10s. So
yeah, I only gave out 1. You should be generous this week.
It was a good week. It's a lot of good books. I had 3 out of 10, so I'm trying to decide what my order my 9 out of 10s are.
We'll get going then.
It's tough. This is wild, but I think I'm going Rorschach at number 1.
Controversial.
Death Metal at number 2, and then Strange Adventures at number 3, and that is wild. Like, I can't believe Strange Adventures. I think every other week we've had a Strange Adventures, it's probably been number 1 for me. And it's not that this issue was any less great, because it is still just as good.
Had competition.
But that means it was a really good week of reading comics. After that, though, I would definitely put Wonder Woman at number 4, and then 5 is kind of a toss-up between Batman, The Outsiders, and Superman, but I will... I will probably lean towards Outsiders, mainly because of all the touching stuff with Cass and Black Lightning stuff, which is really good.
Final issue, Sympathy inclusion as well. You're not going to include it on a top 5 again. So.
Sure, okay, yes, it gets one last hurrah. Bendis has got a couple of chances, but that is not. So there you go, that's a top books of the week. So I will tell you what's coming next week from Detective Comics.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
We have Batman 101. So get your textbooks ready. Class starts at 9 a.m. Don't be late. That's a
terrible. Keep going.
That was a quality joke. So Batman 101, Nightwing 75, which is oversized. I'm just looking at the price. You got Justice League 55, Aquaman 64, Teen Titans 46, Catwoman 26, Dark Knight's Death Metal Robin King, which Connor is going to read because the patrons making him do it, which is delightful. We also have Batman White Knight Presents Harley Quinn issue 1. Metal Men 11's out next week, apparently. And also Scooby-Doo Where Are You 106, if that's your jam. So...
Yeah, I think we've only got 5 or 6 issues, and I think only one of them's oversized.
Yeah, I think I'll probably do one of my Patreon books next week, I think. Just one of them, I think.
I did one last week, right? I don't really remember. It was a whole week ago. It was a long time. I feel like I did a Red Hood last week, but I'm not confident in that.
Yeah, but was that for this month or last month, though? Last month was this month. Yeah, I think you did a Red Hood last week. Go back and double check though. Make sure you're not screwing anyone.
yeah, I will do. Look, they won't let me forget.
They won't. No, David will hunt you down.
Yeah, and I'm not sure when Undiscovered Country is out. I need to figure out when that is this month. I kind of just it's here.
Yes. Because if it's not, you have to switch back to Severed, I believe.
Yeah, I think it is still due this month.
Yes. If you want to hear me and Cara talk about a new Marvel TV show, we reviewed the first episode of Hellstrom yesterday, so you could check out that in the MailFuzz TV YouTube channel if you want. But otherwise, yes, I will thank our patrons at the time of recording. So thank you very much to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Short, Board Now, Al Treisman, Christopher Moy, Brett Williams, and David Brown. They are all our $20 or more patrons on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. And you can support us at that tier if you want the credit and the shout out that you get here. And of course, at the $30 tier, you can make me or Connor read a book. But you can support us over there for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses. At the $5 tier, you get a day early access to comics from the Multiverse. And we were asked this week about previously popping back up. I can tell you that it will not be back in October. I am far too busy in October with other recording commitments to even attempt recording a previously.
Blame Screams.
Blame Screams and a couple of other TV shows, but we will have another episode of Previously for sure in November, so look out for it. But go over there and you get some stuff and tell people the content coming. But if you can't do that, if you can't afford to contribute over a Patreon with monies, that's okay. Do not feel bad. You can support us in other ways. You can hit the like button on YouTube, which does help out a bunch, especially with YouTube recommending us out to more people, as does commenting, dinging the bell for notifications. If you listen to the audio feed, of course, if you're on iTunes or wherever else, give us a 5-star rating and a review. Those things all do help us out a lot. So please do help whenever you can support the show. Otherwise, like I said at the start, go over to @MattofSteel57 on Twitter and give him some encouragement and love and support and maybe compare him to a bear. He likes that. You can also get us on Twitter as a whole at DC Comics Podcast for updates and asking questions and stuff of that nature. Otherwise, is there anything else that I would like to tell you about? I don't think there is, but I'm just stalling for a second while my brain processes the possibilities. No. So thank you very much once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep reading DC Comics, and remember, never get lost. Never to get lost in the Speed Force.